Well, I think overall I bought a couple of hundred cars over the years. My real passion is Ferrari. Yeah, I've had 50 Ferraris now. I bought my 50th one this year. Ferrari have these special cars like the Enzo. They call them F cars. And when I bought this Enzo, the Ferrari dealer said to me, Ferrari, pretty interested you bought that Enzo. You should go to Maranello next week. And we go to this room and it's all sort of darkened off and all the smoke clears and there's the new La Ferrari. And I said, now I'm going to get one of these. He goes, no, it's not that. And I said, well, I definitely would like it. And he goes, well, if things work out well, we'll let you know and you'll pay a deposit. And I said, so once I pay a deposit, then I've got it. Oh, no. He goes, when we ask you for the second deposit, that's when you know you're going to get it. Yeah. So I didn't end up getting it, yeah. So I got introduced to Liam by a guy called Grant McDonald, and he mentored Liam in the early days and gave him a scholarship to get into racing cars after go-karts. And then he went into Formula Ford and he won the New Zealand Formula Ford Championship. He was the youngest in the world. I think he won it at 15. So Turner's put a lot of money into Liam. I've personally put some money in, plus lots of other people. They put money into him. And I think we would have raised out of New Zealand probably $7 or $8 million, all sorts of things, money. And his life has just so changed. You go from being just a guy in New Zealand to being very world famous, and it takes a lot to cope with that. He's still only 24. I can go to the race in the car with him. So you go in through the gates and you park where the Formula One drivers park and you sit in the pits and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, I've done it quite a few times now, so the thrill is slightly worn off. But, the first few times you did it, you sort of can't believe it. Like, you're in the pits there and there's Max Verstappen and it's just all these people. And then you're talking to them and you think, this is unreal,
Grant Baker might be New Zealand's most relentless serial entrepreneur. He built a vodka business in New Zealand, 42 Below, that sold for $138 million to an international company. He sold a fragrance company, Trilogy, for $205 million. And he's been the chairman at Turner's Automotive for the last 16 years, and he also owns that business. And it all started right here in Hamilton with newspaper ads. There's plenty of stories in this one, and you're going to love it. Between Two Beers is proudly brought to you by One New Zealand. We believe One New Zealand connects New Zealand and Between Two Beers connects New Zealanders. And together we are New Zealand's most trusted connection platform. And Between Two Beers is supported by TAB. Download the new app today for faster and easier sports betting. R18, bet responsibly. Seamus and I are also proud to be dressed by Barkers. Check out their range at barkersonline.co.nz. Enjoy. Grant Baker, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, who is Grant Baker? We've spoken to a few people to get their perception of you, and I want to read, the first one is your wife, Donna, and I want to read you what she said.
Yeah.
He said, Grant is a really good husband and father and an incredible provider. When I first met him in my early 20s, he was actually broke, but I knew he had something. He just got some sort of special sauce. He's super focused. Personality-wise, he's probably a 4 out of 10. He's never super high, but also never super low. I'm an 8 out of 10, but that's cool, right? I see the real him, but not everyone does. He really is a good person, but he's got a real knack for surrounding himself with really good people. He finds people that work with him, and he's so loyal. He's a good bloke, but yeah, definitely a 4 out of 10 though.
It's pretty true.
Yeah. Is that fair for the personality? You don't get too high, you don't get too low. You're kind of a bit of an even keel.
Well, try to be, because you have lots of ups and downs in business, and more downs than ups. So, if you react too much in any way, you'd be a mess. So you just try and sort of keep calm and carry on, no matter what's happening, and maybe just be a little bit below a 5. Keep steady.
Yeah. You mentioned about being the centre of attention before. Are you naturally a bit more introverted than you are extroverted?
Definitely, yeah.
So does that mean smaller circles of sort of close friends?
That's definitely true. I mean, when you guys asked me to say, some people you could interview, I thought it's actually quite a small list, because, Don and I don't go out much. We're sort of stay-at-home bodies, and when we go out, especially when I go out, it's pretty much business related or family related, so we don't have a big circle of friends or anything.
The next person we spoke to is Geoff Ross, who you built and sold 42 Below with, who's a former guest of ours. We had him on last year, and it was a cracking episode. Go and listen to it after this one if you haven't already.
I already have. It was very good.
Yeah. So I want to read what he said about you, because I had a really good chat with him yesterday. He said, Grant is someone who speaks softly but carries a big stick. for a quietly spoken guy, he has a very commanding presence. When you work with Grant, when promises are made, there's a higher sense of accountability to those commitments than with anybody else I have worked with. If you've said you're going to do something when you talk with Grant, you know you've got to bloody well get on and do it. When I first met him, I thought he was materialistic, hard-assed and self-centered, and all of those judgments have changed. Yes, he has surrounded himself with some beautiful things, namely cars, but he's more than balanced that with a huge amount of benevolence and charity and giving not just of money, but of time. He's given huge amounts of time to young entrepreneurs and huge amounts of money and time to charity. So the materialistic comment changed after about 6 months when I saw how much he gives back. Look, he is a hard ass in business, absolutely, but he's also an incredible people person as well. You may have got to the point in the book where he was sitting having his chemotherapy when he got cancer. And there's a woman next to him from up north who could only afford one treatment, yet her oncologist had recommended 9 or something like that. So he just went and paid for the rest of her treatments. And there have been so many examples like that. So while he comes across as a hard ass, he actually cares deeply about people.
Oh, very kind.
Yeah. Does that sound like a fair... He said hard ass about 5 times in there. But yeah, is that how you see yourself?
Well, probably not as a hard ass, but sort of focused, and if someone says something to you and says they'll do something, you expect them to do it. And in that environment where I worked with Geoff, we were in Penrose in Auckland, which you didn't like very much. But my thing was, people come up to you in the morning and say, "Morning, how are you?" And I'd just say, "Well, that doesn't matter. How are your numbers looking? Have you done what you said you were going to do?" And people start off, I think, not liking you for that, but after a while they respect you for it. So I think that's probably what he's talking about there. I don't kind of like the fluffiness or, any of that stuff. Just get down to business and do what we're there to do.
How did your relationship with Geoff change when you reflect on it? Like, did you see a change in him over the years too? He sort of gave his impressions of first meeting.
Well, I think over time we became pretty good friends, and, I really liked Geoff and really rate him. But in the beginning, I don't think we probably appreciated each other's skill sets. So, he was very good at marketing, and I didn't really know, I knew what marketing was, but not in the sense that he did it. And the stuff he did was so clever. And I think he probably didn't really understand or appreciate what I'd done either. But when we got the two of us working together, it was kind of a recipe that produced real success. Yeah, we probably spent 6 months or 8 months or something like that feeling each other out, but then it all started to work and we understood it. And, quite different people, but yeah, those 2 ingredients made something work pretty well.
For those listening, I've attempted to summarise the Grant Baker story into one paragraph, and I've obviously left a lot out, but here goes. You turn long shots into paydays. You started a vodka business in New Zealand, 42 below, and sold it to an international company for $138 million. You started a fragrance company, Trilogy, that you sold for $205 million. You bought 20% of a busted finance company for $400K during the GFC and built it into Turner's Automotive, where you've been the chairman for the last 16 years, and it's now worth $720 million on the NZX. You've bought around 50 Ferraris with 10 still in your garage, and you backed a Kiwi racing driver who ended up making it in Formula One.
Well, that's kind of the highlights, isn't it? The lowlights would be much more.
Yeah. The question I had after all that is, do you feel like you've fulfilled your potential?
No, not at all, really. I think people generally don't. You could always do more. I made plenty of mistakes. I mean, you make more mistakes than you make correct decisions, really. You just got to make the correct decisions bigger than the mistakes. But yeah, I think there's a lot more we could have done. I think I could have tried harder. I tried pretty hard, but could have tried harder. But you wonder what you sacrificed to do that. So, I'm not dissatisfied or anything, but yeah, I could have done more for sure. And, I'm still trying.
I was going to say, are you still, is the fire still burning inside? You're still trying to spin all the plates all at once?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's weird. I always thought when I was younger, I could retire at 55 or something, and, I could have. But the more I've gone on, the more I realise what I actually like doing is the business stuff. And, and I'm 70 next year, so that's getting pretty old. Sounds really old to me, but I still sort of feel I'd like to be doing stuff and I don't want to quit. I just think, why would I, and what would I do if I did? I'm not very good at golf, or, used to do a bit of race driving, which I like doing, but I'm sort of too old for that now. Couldn't stand a big accident or anything. I probably wouldn't survive it. So, yeah. I'm still keen to do more.
One of your earliest memories is standing at your bedroom window waiting for your dad to come home in his new VW Beetle. Is that the early memory when sort of cars became a symbol of success for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really think of cars as a symbol of success. I guess they are, but it's not why I'm into them. I just love cars and driving and racing and all that sort of stuff. But it's possibly when it started. My dad did like cars, and my parents were kind of came from quite humble beginnings. So my mother was born in Invercargill, and her parents moved up to Auckland. She left school when she was 15. And my father was born in Whangarei, and he went through school. He got to, I think they called it the upper sixth form, year 13 in his day, but then left and became a labourer. So, but when they got together, they both worked, and it was quite unusual to have two people working in a family in those days. So they got enough money to buy a house, and they got enough money to buy a new car, which was very rare in the 50s. Not many people would have that. So, yeah, I definitely liked the car. It was very cool. It was my father's pride and joy. So, it is my earliest memory of cars.
What other lessons did they impart on you, or did you learn by, maybe not directly imparted on you, but from observing how they behaved and how they were in terms of work ethic or things like that?
Well, they were very hard workers. So I mean, my mum had me, and she was a housewife for a little while, but then went back to work. And they used to talk about money a lot. And especially in those days, in the 50s and 60s, people didn't talk about money very much. It was a taboo subject. So
it still is now for some people.
Yeah, a lot of families don't talk about it, but they used to talk about it all the time because they were wanting to get ahead. And they had a few friends too who were kind of in the same boat. So I used to sit very quietly in the corner and just listen to it all, never say much. And, I remember quite often they go, "You still here? Go to bed," because I'd just be sitting there listening to stuff. But yeah, they didn't even necessarily, I think, know what they're doing, but they were always discussing things and thinking about things and trying new things on. And, some of them worked and some of them didn't.
You spent more than 2 years at Teachers College, but ended up leaving that, working for Barry Coleman at the Waikato Weekender. One of your friends we spoke with, Mark Holloway, no relation, remembers that Barry once refused to let you back upstairs until you'd made a sale, and this was in the book as well. Can you retell that story?
Yeah, well, that was pretty tough working there because Barry just started that business. I think he was into it 6 months, and they trained you by, doing a few jobs, and he gave me the sheet that was, I think, 16 ways or 14 ways to close the sale, and went on a few calls with him, and then it's like, right, go and sell something. You're on your own. That particular story is one that really stands out for me because he said, go and see this guy at Marine Services in Hamilton. He said, he hasn't done anything with us for a while. So I went to see this guy, and I can't remember his name, but I remember the company. And I said, I'm here from the Waikato Weekender, and I want to talk to you about advertising and, helping you with your business, get more business in. And he just said, no, bugger off. I've had you guys before. It was a waste of money. So I went back to the office, and we're in an upstairs building. It was actually here on Victoria Street, I think, a bit further south. And I opened the door at the bottom of the stairs, and there's Barry standing at the top with his arms out wide, and he goes, so? And I said, well, I didn't get anything. He goes, don't come back here till you got something, and just see you later. Mm. So that was a hard lesson. Yeah, so I had to go. I went back to Marine Services, and
what's going through your mind here?
I think I'm so in the shit. I don't know. I was quite obedient because a lot of people would have told him to jam it, wouldn't they? These days probably, but anyway, because he told me to do it, I thought I have to do it. Otherwise, I might not have a job. So I went back, and so I think his name was Graham. And I said, he said, what are you doing back here? And I said, well, Barry told me I had to not come back without an ad. And he said, well, I've already told you it's not going to happen. And then he wandered off doing the things he did in the boat shop, and I didn't know what to do. So I went to his office and just sat in a chair. And like an hour later, he comes back and he goes, oh, what are you doing here? And I said, I don't know what else to do because
How old are you at this point?
21.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, maybe 21. And he basically took pity on me and bought something, and went back to the office, and I had a sale.
Were you a natural salesperson? Did it come? I mean, you've read the 14 whatever techniques, and you've had a couple of calls, but did that kind of pitter patter of sales come naturally?
I think in a way, yes. I think not in a loud kind of salesman-y sort of way, but I think I was quite good at negotiating things, so talking my way into things. So.
Well, you've got the sale, so you must have done something.
Yeah, I think I've always been, reasonably articulate and stuff, and being able to tell a story well, and get on with someone if I had to, and those sort of things, but not in the way, you would envisage a salesperson being sort of loud and gregarious and that sort of thing. Not like that.
Yeah, Mark said that one of your great strengths is that you're comfortable saying no yourself, and that might help you with, I don't know, if that's related to sales. Does that ring true?
Yeah, well, one of the things I learned along the course of selling is people say no a lot, and, you don't take people, if they say no, you don't take it at first shot. Barry used to tell me that the best salespeople hear no 7 times before they give up. So I always kept trying. And I think, on the reverse side of that, when I was managing a lot of people, at the time I was working with Geoff, I just used to say no to people all the time. So someone would come into my office and they go, "Oh, Grant," I'd just go, "No." I said, "You can't say no. You don't even know what I'm saying." I said, "Whatever it is, I don't like it. Is it going to cost me money?" And you just sort of be tough on people. And so I still do that now from time to time, just to make life not easy.
Do you sometimes change your position, though, if it's a first up no and someone comes back with a...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, right.
For sure. But, you make people earn it, don't you?
So to continue the path, you started some small businesses with little success. You had a little advertising agency and a hot bread shop.
Yeah.
Then you split from your first wife. You had to sell your car, which meant you had to bike to your sales job. You're working at Xerox at the time. And you ended up parking your bike around the corner from client meetings so that they didn't know you didn't have a car.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And those sexy little clips you put around your pants so they don't go in the chain.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had my briefcase on the carrier on the back.
Yeah. I just think it's such a fascinating detail of someone, because we're going to get to the incredible wealth you've amassed and all the nice cars and things, but you started from someone who, biked to work and left it around the corner because you didn't have that wealth.
That's right, I had no choice.
Was it a perception thing from the sales side of it, that you wanted to present a certain way to potential clients?
Well, you want to look successful, don't you? I mean, people want to deal with successful people, so you don't want to look like you're unsuccessful.
The next chapter takes you to P&G. So Donna met you when she was in her early 20s and you were broke. So your net worth was negative 30K.
Yeah.
You were over leveraged with your properties, and when the property boom came to a screeching halt, you found yourself in the staggering debt. So you're in your mid-20s, you're in debt, and you decide to move to P&G to work as a manager of Remington, which is an office equipment company. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about the decision to move to P&G and what those years were like?
Well, it kind of had to, because 30 grand, I mean, still a reasonable amount of money, but in those days that would have bought you an average house in Hamilton. So I was sort of short of a house. I was negative one house. And I just thought, well, there's no way I'm ever going to get out of it. And technically I was bankrupt. I mean, I never went bankrupt because I didn't want to. I didn't want that stain. But I thought I have to work it off somehow, and I can't do that. Like in those days in New Zealand, a good salary would have been 10 or 12 grand a year or something, and you owe 30, and it's 12 grand before tax, right? So and you got to live. So you spend your whole life paying it off. So my parents had moved to P&G, and they liked it there and did well. So my father ended up running an engineering company, or road building engineering company, and they'd gone up there and building roads in P&G, and we went to visit them. And I met the guy who ran Remington, he was in their social circle, and got talking to him, and he said, "Oh, you should come up here and work for us, and the money's much better and the tax is very little." And at those days, the currency there is called the kina, and the kina was about the same value as a US dollar. So every one of those you earned was worth a couple of New Zealand dollars. So we just thought, well, this is a way out of this. If we do 2 or 3 years up there, I've got enough money to pay that off and enough money to buy another house. So we ended up going up there for 4 years and achieving that.
So we've done similar career things. We've gone from Hamilton to Papua New Guinea. I did it in 2015. Yeah. You're doing it in the mid-'80s.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big cultural jump and adjustment. Was it just a whole new frontier for you, like a blank page to just start afresh? Or I'm just really fascinated by getting boots on the ground and then just seeing what you learnt and what your first impressions were.
Yeah, I'd been to visit my parents once before that time, so I sort of knew what I was getting into. But the good thing about it is they have expatriates, so any person that comes from outside the country is an expat, and they had a ratio in those days anyway if you had one expat for every 50 locals. So you basically had a lot of responsibility, so you straight away got there. I'd never managed people before, and I got there and all of a sudden managing 50 people. And it wasn't like managing 50 people here, I don't know what it's like now, but then it was a very primitive place. Just come out of independence from Australia, and a lot of pretty uneducated people and very superstitious people. So, you were managing all sorts of stuff that you would not normally. And, most of these people didn't live in a house. They lived in a village. So they were sort of transitioning from a village life to, more Western type lifestyle. But, you'd have some of these people come in and they'd absolutely stink. And you'd say, look, you've got to go home and have a shower. And, they'd talk pigeon to you. They go, I got shower and we got pipe. So, well, go to the pipe and come back and smell a bit better, please. And it's just you're managing like very low-end personal stuff and at the same time trying to train them into this is how a word process works or something.
That was the other part I was thinking as well. Of I wasn't sure the need of word processors and office equipment in an emerging nation like that in the 1980s. Like you must have really had to have your work cut out to make a few sales there.
Yeah, it was. I think the business did very well, but we used to sell to government departments, and there was a lot of big corporates there, like sort of Octedi Mining, a lot of plantation owners, those sort of people who needed office equipment, and those were in the days when fax machines were a big deal. So there's quite a big communication requirement. So there's a lot of big international companies. So there was a real different speed. Yeah, there's all sort of high-tech, wealthy companies there, and then these people are pretty, basic, primitive people at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, managing people must have been one of the big takeaways that you got over those 4 years.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I learned a lot about how to manage people because you just had so many things that, like basically everyone there had malaria, and if you know anything about malaria, you get it and it's potentially recurring. So you get it once, you can get it many times. So there's always someone off work with malaria. So, and when people took time off, they wouldn't. It's not like here you sort of fill in a sick leave. They just don't turn up for a week.
Yeah, I've been there.
So so they come in a week later and you go, where have you been? Oh, I got malaria.
Or a parent has passed away and they had that obligation.
Yeah. I had a guy once who said he had a spell cast on him by a witch doctor, and he truly believed that. So he was about a month out.
So you're there for 4 years. You're kind of on this upward skill trajectory or whatever you want. You've become a manager. You leave, you return, you've cleared the debt, you've saved enough for a house deposit, and then you go back to Xerox in New Zealand and then telecom. On paper, you write about telecom gave you everything you were meant to want. Money, a corner office, a PA, and a nice car, but you describe it as the worst job you ever had. Why do you think that comfort felt so purposeless, and what do you remember about that period?
Probably the biggest thing is, that those sort of things like the corner office and the 3-litre car and all those sort of things were the things people worried about. So people weren't worried about, can we make the company better? They were just all out for themselves as individuals. So the other companies I've been involved in, you're involved in the planning and, everyone's a piece of the puzzle to make the company work better. And at Telecom, it was a government department for 3 weeks when I joined. So it was very government departmentship and they had unions there and all that sort of thing, which I'd had no experience of. So I didn't mind that part actually. I was involved in a lot of restructuring and those sort of things when I started there. But as it kind of evolved to a big corporate, it was just so unsatisfying. And there was no one even making you work. I could have just sat in my office all day and played Sudoku or something. There was just, or if you tried really hard, no one had noticed the difference. It was just so frustrating. I just couldn't stand it really. And
then Eric Watson re-enters your life. So he had bought Blue Star and he told you, I'm going to turn this into $1 billion business and you can come along for the ride. And the business, I think, was turning over around 12 million a year at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that initial, like your relationship with Eric and how it started and then how he pulled you across to Blue Star?
He used to be my boss at Xerox. So we used to call ourselves Xeroids. So he was a Xeroid. And he'd left Xerox. So he was quite senior there. I think he was the number 2 guy at Xerox. So this is after the days when I had to interview with Kevin Tate. Kevin Tate had gone at that stage. But Eric was like a reasonably big boss there. And I ended up reporting directly to him. And then he left and went and bought Blue Star. So when he was at Xerox, he sort of had business things on the side. So he had a printing company and a few other things, office products company on the side. And then he bought this Blue Star company. And it was quite prominent in Auckland. He used to sit up the top of Upper Queen Street and you could sort of see it from the motorway. So it looked quite big time.
Is that the one that was Blue Star taking care of business?
That is exactly the one.
Is that the one?
That is the one.
The power of a jingle, eh?
Yeah, it's still stuck in my head now.
Yeah, well, that was a while ago too.
Yeah.
One of my jobs at Telecom was looking after dealers. So we had people who would resell products and services for us, and Blue Star was one of those. So just as part of that job, I had to ring Eric and sort of say, I'm your dealer representative now. And he goes, what the fuck are you doing there? Why would you be doing that? That is not you. You should come and work with me. And he goes, I'm going to make this $1 billion company. You come here, you can have some equity. And I said, well, I haven't got any money. And I always remember he goes, well, sell something. You got a house, haven't you? And I said, yeah, I've got a few assets. And he goes, well, sell it. And I said, well, I don't know, who am I going to sell it to? And he goes, I'll buy it off you. That can be your equity. And in the end, we didn't do that. We sold it and we put some money in. But, he just, I don't know, made it sound so attractive that I thought, why the hell not? And I was so kind of disappointed in my telecom job. I hated it. So I thought I'd have a crack.
Was it the thought of being back hands-on, of being, I guess, part of that business and building something bigger than yourself that appealed with Eric's kind of pitch?
I always wanted to be somebody, didn't want to be ordinary, I guess. And it just looked like a pathway for that. And I was always keen on making money, but never made very much at that stage. Never enough anyway. Yeah, so it was appealing, and Eric's a very charismatic guy, so he sold it to me pretty well.
Spoiler alert, it works out really well. But I feel like this is a really pivotal part of the book, and this is kind of the business of going all in. This is what you do. So you resigned from telecom, you sold your Takapuna townhouse, you sold the block of flats in Hamilton and your E-Type Jaguar, and you put everything into this business. You bought 7% of Blue Star, which was at 7 times forecast earnings, and you now acknowledge the valuation was highly inflated and probably paid twice that you should have.
Yeah.
But balls on the line, right? Talk to me about that decision to actually just sell everything and just put it all in on this one bet.
I probably thanked Donna for that quite a lot, because I was pretty frustrated at telecom, as I said. But, we just had a baby at that stage, our first baby, so Mitch was, I don't know, 5 or 6 months old then. So it was sort of a big call, but Don said, you should do it, have a go. If you don't, we're still reasonably young. We can start again. It's not like trying it when you're old.
That's some amazing belief.
And you don't want to die wondering. Yeah, no, she did have a high degree of belief, which was more belief than I had myself sometimes.
I always look for things with guests of what makes them exceptional. And you say it was just a thing you do. I think very few people would have the balls to do that, right? Sell everything for a 7% stake in a company and just absolutely go all in on it.
Burning the boats, right?
Burning the boats is what you say. Do you encourage, because I know you do a lot of mentoring with young entrepreneurs and business owners. Do you encourage that kind of?
No. I had someone call me recently. I did an interview on Radio New Zealand, and someone called me afterwards who had a business that was really struggling and said, what should I do? Because I'm really on the cusp. I don't know what to do. And if it was me, I wouldn't give up. I'd just say, well, no matter what, I'm going to make this work. But I sort of dumb advice to myself a lot of times. And I said to her, look, honestly, I think you're better to call it quits and start again, because you're so young, and to get out from under that heap of rubbish you've got, it's going to take so long, you won't have any energy left. So, do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing.
But sometimes do people give up a little bit too early than maybe they should?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time. Perseverance is worth a heap. Yeah, I think a lot of people do, because it is tough being in business, and you have lots of problems, lots of tough times. And it's quite lonely as well, especially if you're at the top of something, because you haven't, going back to Eric, when I first worked for him, he used to just give me crap all the time. And, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? I went in the shop one day and, there weren't enough pencils in there and it's your fault. He just used to give me heaps all the time. And I said to him in the end, I said, look, stop writing me like that. I've done a lot of good things. Why don't you talk about that? And he said, well, that's the job. You worry about that stuff. We're not worried about what's going right. We're worried about what's going wrong. Yeah, and I've sort of learnt from that, and, don't expect too much praise. You just got to be resilient. Yeah. I read a quote by Elon Musk in the last couple of days, and he said the key to success in business is how much pain you can endure, and I thought that's a pretty good quote, really.
Because the 3 years at Blue Star, were they painful? Were they challenging in terms of pushing you to the very limit?
They sure were. So I had this theory of I would work really hard. So I tried not to do work on the weekends. Just have some time off with children and wife and all those sort of things. But on the weekday, I used to make sure I was at the office at 7 o'clock, and I wouldn't leave till 7 o'clock at night, because that way I'd see whoever came in, anyone who was slacking, anyone who left early, you knew everything. So you sit in that office in Upper Queen Street and watch everyone come in, watch them leave. And you lead by example too. And if you're leading by example, people don't want to be slackers either. So, I So I think it was really hard work and quite hard to adjust to that because we lived on the shore, so to be at work at 7, you had to leave home at like 6:15, and if you left at 7, you weren't home till 7:30 or 8 or something. So they're really, really long days. And then, to go along with that, we never had enough money because we had the speed wobbles permanently because we were growing really, really fast. And the whole of that three and a half years, we went from 12 million turnover to $1 billion turnover, and we didn't have near enough working capital to support that, like nowhere near enough. We're just in trouble all permanently. So you're working really hard. You think any day it could be my last. Yeah, it was a very tough time. And I got lumped with a lot of the stuff there because Eric's view of the world was, I'm working on the business, not in the business. So he had no hours. He'd ring me any time of the day or night. He didn't care weekends or anything and just give me a hard time. And, if I ever asked him anything, what do you think about this? He goes, why are you asking me? It's your job. That's what I pay you for. You go out and make it happen. Oof. Yeah. So it was a really tough time. And, we got so in trouble there, like many examples of it. But where we ended up was where we owed money to BNZ, was our main banker, and we were on credit watch with them, which is a thing you don't want because it's kind of the step before they put you under. They had a person working full-time in our office watching everything we did, and he was sitting, right next to me. You couldn't do anything without his say-so. Couldn't pay anyone or anything. So it was very tough times.
And do you take personal, I know Eric's pumping it all on you as well, but are you taking personal ownership and additional stress from that situation as well?
Definitely, because, if that hadn't worked, the burning the boats thing, what have you got? You're just back to scratch and starting again. And you do, I don't get it these days, but in those days, people like my parents or Donna's parents say, what the hell is wrong with you? You think you're clever, don't you? You've risked everything and you're not looking after your family right, and people everywhere just giving you a hard time and think you're an idiot for doing what you're doing. So you just got pressures from every side, really, so you've got to have an awful lot of resilience.
I think you describe it in the book as drinking from a fire hose for 3 years, which I love. Can you tell us more about Eric? Because there's some anecdotes in the book about, some sort of negotiation, and he comes in late and he writes something on the back of a napkin and they say, I'd like to get this in writing. And he said, well, you just have. Like, was it that kind of cowboy? I'm not sure if cowboy is the right term, but was it kind of fast and loose with lots of things?
I wouldn't say fast and loose, but, we were in a hurry for sure. Because you're not going to build a $1 billion business by being timid, aren't you? And you've got to have a crack. And, if you try and make everything perfect, you don't make any progress. You're too busy dotting the I's and crossing the T's sort of thing, and you don't get anywhere. So I think, that one example you're referring to there, we were trying to buy a business in Australia, and we talked through the concept of the deal, and these guys said, well, it sounds good. Can we have it in writing? And he'd been writing it on the back of a napkin at the restaurant. This kid have in writing, he goes, yeah, here, you've got it. And because, in a way you don't need more than that. We agreed on it. We'd give that bit of paper to a lawyer, so draft up a contract like that and on to the next one, because we didn't have time to muck around with it. Mm. Yeah.
That's an experience, isn't it? I'm thinking about your accumulative experiences as you've gone through and thinking it makes sense where you are now based on these early steps of cutting your teeth and working in these high pressure environments and fast and makes a lot of sense.
You're moving from kind of disaster to disaster, but you are learning stuff along the way.
Just on Eric, he went from 21st on the New Zealand rich list worth 220 million odd in 2011 to broke, dodging bankruptcy in a UK courtroom, spent some time in jail. Did that downfall surprise you?
It probably did in a way. I mean, he was always a guy, probably still is, a guy who likes to push boundaries, but I never thought he would have crossed it to the extent that he ended up where he did. So, I was in a lot of negotiations with him over the years, and he sure pushed hard. And, you'd be in a lot of deals that we really wanted, and he would just, the person would say, you have to take the deal because I know it'll be really bad for you if you don't. And he goes, well, I don't care, it'll be bad for you too. So, I'm prepared to take it, are you? And, we got lots of deals that way, but he obviously just pushed a few things a little bit too far, and I think he got on the wrong side of a few people who are pretty powerful, and that's probably what tipped him up.
When was the last time you were in contact with him?
I saw him last in 2018, so 8 years ago. And it was quite interesting. I was in Monaco to watch the Grand Prix, and I was staying in the Hotel de Paris, which is a very nice hotel, and I get in the lift, and Eric's in the lift. So I thought, well, that's a fluke. So we ended up hanging out for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But he said, pushed it too far this time. It's not going to end well.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's, I think, about the start of it, when his trouble started. But I haven't talked to him since then.
How do you reflect on those years of learning under Eric? Like, do you feel like that was in somewhat set you up for success? Like, do you look on it fondly?
Yeah, I don't know, fondly, because it was a very stressful time, but it certainly was formative. And, without that background, I couldn't have done it. I mean, I think I was very lucky. Talked about Barry Coleman before, that I worked for him, because I learned a lot from him. And I learned from my boss, Frank Cagney, and P&G. You just have people who you learn lots of things from. And I think I was very lucky getting good bosses. Another guy, Ken Adamson, who's from Hamilton, he was my boss at Xerox when I was here. And then Eric was kind of the finishing school, because he was thinking really big. So he wasn't just thinking about, gee, can we hit our sales target this month? He's thinking, how can we get $1 billion? And you've got to think in a different way to do that.
There's some wild stories in this book. I want to talk about one of them.
Yeah, this next one is crazy.
So when you're at Blue Star, there's you, there's Eric, and there's Paul Smithies, and you're trying to value a telecom business that didn't have a proper profit and loss statement or reliable books. So each of you wrote down a number and placed the number in a container and agreed to bid whatever figure was pulled out.
Yeah.
And I want to read this passage from the book. You say, "It's hard to explain exactly how mad this thought was, yet it's how the entire business operation had been. Any CFO or advisor would wring us by the neck for this, but it's just how we operated. We took outrageous and, on reflection, really a bit crazy dice rolls in that business. I wrote 15 million on my slip, and that was the one that got pulled out. We can never know if it was the right number, and I know Eric wanted to pay a lot less for it, but it got us in the business, and from there we had to work out how to actually pay for it."
Yeah, well, that was very true.
That's like the wildest game of credit card roulette I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this is back in the 90s. So, I mean, $15 million is a lot of money, no matter what way you cut it. But then it's probably the equivalent of 50 million today. And we had like 2 million. So we didn't have enough money anywhere near it.
Do you know what the other two wrote?
No, I don't. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You must ask them straight. What did you guys have?
Yeah. I probably knew at the time because I would have looked, but I don't remember. Yeah.
Higher, lower, far out. That's a wow.
Eric would have been lower for sure, but I don't know what Paul would have thought. Paul and I knew the business quite well because we'd both worked for telecom, so we knew the ins and outs of it, and we were really pushing Eric to do it. And it was actually the best acquisition we ever did. But he was uncertain about it and didn't know if he wanted to do it.
You didn't pull it out and go, no, it's 1.5. You didn't see the.
No, Paul and I sold him pretty hard on that. It was a great business. It was the making of Blue Star buying that business, because we had a cunning plan that no one else had. When we bought that business, there was quite a few bidders for it, but we were the highest bidder. But what we knew is there's a big rental stream there. So, if you capitalise up rental streams, you can turn it into a valuable asset. And we had that mindset on it, and really no one else did. They were people who just thought, we'll rent the stuff and we'll service it and we'll answer the phone. But we thought, we can take this thing that's being rented for $1,000 a week, and if we lock that person in for 3 or 4 years, that's got a capital value, and then we can go and borrow against that capital value. So, yeah, it just transformed the company, because we had something we didn't, in total, pay very much for to what it was actually worth.
So there was a method behind the...
Well, it was more. I don't think Eric actually understood that at that time, but Paul and I did. So he sort of went along for the ride. I mean, he was very good like that. He'd never say, "It's a shit idea, we're not going to do it." He'd say, "Well, okay, you guys are that keen, let's do it."
You guys seem to know.
Yeah.
You guys seem to be keen on it.
Yeah.
The other fascinating detail about this is you submitted the bid without having secured the finance, like you said, and the funding went down to the final minute. So Eric's. And they on the other end knew that you had to get this over the line, but Eric is kind of saying, "I don't care, I'll go broke, I'll let the deal fall apart." Meanwhile, you've gone all in on this, and the clock's ticking to sort of 11:56, 57, 58, 59, and then it gets over the line at 11:59.
Yeah, it did. So we got an investment to make the deal happen. Well, we were far past the settlement date. We're like a month past the settlement date. So we had possession of the business, but we still hadn't paid for it. So we were meeting with Direct Capital, amongst other people, trying to get the money. Anyway, Direct Capital, they're quite a big private equity firm now, but in those days we were their first customer. So there's a bit of history there. Direct Capital, quite a big deal now, but we were their first customer. And we had some of the guys in the office with us, and we were up in our office in central Auckland. And we had a guy called John Fernyhough on the line, who was the chairman of Direct Capital, and he was chairman of, I think, Electricorp. He was kind of a big-time businessman at that time. And the guy we were dealing with in our office, we're saying, no, we're not doing the deal, we're not doing the deal. And it would have sent us broke not doing the deal, for sure. And Eric's just hanging out, and he's just sitting there with his feet on the table like he hasn't got a care in the world. I'm stressing out like nothing else. 5 minutes to midnight. And then this guy, John Fernyhough, he's just going, you're bluffing. I know you're bluffing. You've got to do it. No sane person wouldn't do it. It's a lifeline. It gets to 11:59 and he goes, okay, fuck it, we're going to do it. Yeah, see, I knew you would.
Sending you through the what? Do you remember where your head was at? Like stress levels, as that was all playing out?
Well, honestly, it was like every day there. Pretty much, there's just a potential disaster just around the corner. So that would have been the worst one. Yeah, that was a very, very stressful time.
But you do have this plan in place. If when it does go through, it's going to open doors. So I guess there's a relief. I don't know if that's the right word, but once the deal goes through, you've got a path that you can follow and execute.
Yeah, and I think we did a really good job of that. Telecom hated that business. They hated being in, they called it CPE, customer premises equipment. So it was things like telephones and PABX systems and stuff. And they hated it. They didn't want to be in that business. They wanted to be in a network business. And they didn't know how to run it. But because I'd been at Xerox, I knew how to run that style of business. And we just wanted to apply the Xerox methodology to it, really, which is what we did. And it was super successful for us.
You know, that negotiate, I've got Wolf of Wall Street kind of vibes going through my head about like you're living a real life version of that in some kind of degree.
Yeah.
I just feel like the detail here is so fascinating because you've sold up, you've got 7% of this company, 3.5 years you said the time frame was, right? And then Eric calls you out of the blue and said, I'm selling for 100 million, which means you get 14 million.
Well, 7 million.
7 million.
7 million.
7 million. Turn into 14,
There's more of a story there,
But how did you catch wind that he was actually selling the company and what this would mean for you?
Well, he did one of his periodic, disappearances, and he was sort of gone for a week, and I don't know where he was. So we were just carrying on with our BNZ going, watching everything we do. And the phone just went one day, and he's everything's all right now. I've sold the business. And I said, where the hell are you? And he said, I'm in Palm Springs, but I've sold the business. And I thought he was just having me on, So I said, oh, yeah, how much did you get? And he said, 100 million. Well, that's a good deal. It's my vote, And it went on like, he's going, seriously, it's 100 million. I've got it. And he said, I'm bringing the guy down next week. And he's the CEO of US Office Products, who was the buyer. And he goes, I've got to get everything really good for him because he said, obviously we haven't got it on paper. So he spruce everything up, make it look really good and, take him up in a helicopter and show him around and, take him to Waiheke for lunch. And so we did all that. And we were really, I remember at the time the weather was so good in Auckland. It was just those beautiful kind of spring days, just blue skies. And he's going, so God damn, you've got a beautiful country here. And anyway, we ended up getting the deal done. And where the 14 million came in, so the deal was 100 million, but as it turned out, they didn't have much cash. So they said they were a sort of high-growth company. And they said, look, we'll give you 10 million in cash and we'll give you 90 million in shares. And obviously there's big risk in that because if shares go down, you lose a lot of money. And we had a lockup on the shares, so we couldn't sell them. So it was a 6-month lockup, so we couldn't sell them for 6 months. So in that 6 months, they could be worth, nothing at one extreme or a lot more at the other extreme. But as it turned out, they doubled in that 6 months. And what happened at that time, I sold and I was out. I was gone, thanks very much, because it was 14 million. And it was like more money than I'd ever seen by a long shot. So, but Eric stayed on for quite a while afterwards.
I'm sitting there and I'm trying to process 14 million and what that means to you as an individual.
Yeah, well, that was in the late 90s. So I'd say 14 million would have bought you, the best house in Auckland. So it was a lot of money. And, it's surreal, really, because you go your whole life having no money and all of a sudden you've got and it's in cash, So, whoa,
Most people probably stopped working at that point.
I sort of did because I thought, I can be Eric Mark II here because obviously if I made 14, he made a hell of a lot more. That's why he was at his 220 million.
Is that when he bought the Warriors?
Yeah, it was after that. Not directly after that, but it was later on, yeah. But I sort of thought I could be more like that. So I could get, other people doing stuff for me, and I could cruise around Palm Springs. I thought that was sort of a good idea. So we set up, myself and another business partner set up a company called Netco, and he went and ran the company, and I thought I'll just cruise around and do nothing for a while. So I did that for 6 months, and then sort of got dragged into working in the business, for a variety of reasons. And then once I got in there, thought, we can do more stuff and get bigger, and just back on the treadmill, really. When
you get 14 million hits your bank or whatever, are you thinking...
Or whatever?
Yeah. Is your mindset thinking, how do I turn this into 100? Or is your mind just thinking, I've made it, this is pretty cool?
No, the first thing. I didn't think I'd made it for sure.
No?
I thought it was like, I never really expected it, although you try for it, you don't think it's going to come true, but you keep trying anyway. But then you realise, well, hey, it's doable, so maybe I could do it again. Yeah, so that was really the thought, and the thought that stayed with me, really. I've done it a few times now, so maybe I can do it again.
Yeah. Was there a confidence? And I mean, there's a lot of the journey to come still, but at this point, did you feel like you kind of knew what you were doing in business?
Yeah, I definitely didn't, but I knew more than I'd known before. Yeah, so... And the other thing you get is you get more opportunity because you've got some credibility because you've done well at something. So people will talk to you when they wouldn't have talked to you before.
Does it remember where you exhale and go, all of that 3.5 years of stress was worth it because I've got this tangible thing out of that?
No, I'm not very backward looking, so I'm more sort of forward looking. So I'm probably in denial most of the time, but I'm not looking back and going, that was terrible. I'm looking, I've got this money, what can I do,
So as you mentioned, you started the new business Netco, which sell like enhanced services like FPOS machines. You sold that for 4 million. Then you built Empower up and sold that to Contact for 26 million, which is another kind of chapter. And there's probably a bit to talk about there, but the part I was going to get to was you got a check for 26 million at the end of that, right?
Yeah.
But what
was it one of those big novelty ones to fit all the zeros on it, or was it just a normal size check?
No, it was just a normal size check. But yeah, I know the story you're referring to. So Paul Smithies and I were up closing this deal. And the deal was, it was actually more than 26 million. So it was a $26 million deposit. And then we had an earn out. So we had to stay working in the business under Contact's ownership. And depending on how well we did, they topped up the purchase price. So I think we ended up getting around 70 million for it in total. So 26 was the start. But the 26...
Sorry. Are they just numbers on when they're this big, are they just numbers on a spreadsheet or you know what I mean? Like,
well,
I'm like going $26.
Yeah,
different zeros on it.
You just get used to different things, right?
Right.
Like, you dine on caviar a few times. That's your go-to, isn't it? Or you stay in a 5-star hotel a few times. That's what you do. So
you fly business class once and you can never go back. Hey? Am I right?
Yeah.
That's a really good analogy. That's exactly right. So you kind of that becomes your life and who you are, sort of thing. But we were up, and it was on a Friday afternoon, and we're in Paul Anthony's office, who was the boss of Contact Energy at that time. And he was giving us a bit of a lecture. He's going, look, we're throwing our lot in with you guys, and you better bloody behave and better not do bad things to our reputation. You're part of a big corporate now, and it's a really big lecture. So we're just nodding like hell because you could see on the table, you could see the check, and it was upside down. It was facing him, but I could see it. I didn't want to grab it and run out the door. But anyway, the time's pressing on, and it's just before 5 o'clock. We go downstairs, and we actually got this physical check in our hands. And Paul says, you get quite a lot of interest on this if you get it in the bank over the weekend. We look, it's after 5 o'clock, but there's a Westpac right there. So he'd knock on the door of the Westpac, and they're all doing signs, pointing at their watches and that sort of stuff, like we're closed. And we get the check and we hold it up to the glass door. The guy comes and looks, we click, unlocks the door.
Counting the zeros.
Yeah, we got it on deposit for the weekend. I forget what that earned. It was like 20 grand or something. I might be wrong there. But it was worth doing for sure. Yeah.
The only reason I'm skipping through these chapters, which are quite substantial, is because there's still so much to come. Yeah. But at this point, you are a serial entrepreneur. You've had all this business success. And then I want to link us up with 42 Below and Geoff Ross, because he'd built a small vodka business in his garage. He was selling around 500 cases a year. And he said he thought he might eventually reach 1,000.
Yeah.
And then so how did you first come into contact with Geoff, and what did you tell him?
The way I met him, I had a guy working for me by the name of James Wesley. So he was a sales rep for us at Empower. And he went to work for Geoff, and Geoff was managing partner at DDB. And he came back and saw me and said, hey, you should meet my new boss. He's he's a really cool guy, and he's got this vodka business. And, you should have a talk to him. I think you guys would get on well. So we met and, we had that conversation. And, I said to Geoff, it's quite famously, I've used it a lot, but, he said, I could do 1,000 cases. And I said, seriously, get a real goal. And he was very taken aback by it at the time, but he always remembers that was the kind of start of it, because it's like, what could you really do if you really wanted to? Because there's really no point in selling 1,000 cases of vodka. Just a little cottage industry, so why would you bother? So have a proper go.
Did you see something about that company that triggered that response, that there was real potential to grow here, or was it just the ceiling that he'd set for himself?
Oh, the company had a lot of potential because the world market in white spirits, particularly vodka and tequila, is massive, hundreds of billions of dollars. And there was a resurgence in the spirits world at that time, and I sort of knew that, so there's sort of less people buying beer, more people buying wine, more people buying cocktails, that sort of stuff. And it was a worldwide market, and, selling things made in New Zealand is quite a good story when you're overseas, kind of the clean green type thing. And vodka sort of lent itself to that quite well. So that's sort of why we liked it to begin with. Geoff obviously bought into it. I mean, we were very tough on him on that deal because we put, I think it was 2.1 million in when we did that, and we didn't put it in as cash. We put it in a loan. So I said, Geoff, we'll loan you the 2.1 million, and what you've got to do with that is put it in the business to make the business run. So he probably felt pretty hard done by at the time, but obviously it worked out pretty well for him.
We sort of covered this in great detail with Geoff. You were the accelerator, Steve Sinclair was the brakes, and you eventually identified you needed a steering wheel, which became Geoff. How did that team dynamic work between the three of you?
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. Like, I still work with Steve. So Steve's, I don't know, he might hate me for saying it, but he's a bit of a pessimist, and I'm a lot of an optimist.
I like that. That's us.
I'm the gas, he's the brakes.
Yeah, I'm very much the brakes. But I'm not a numbers. Yeah, I am a little bit.
You'd get on well with Steve. He's just, whenever you talk to him about it, I don't mean to be negative, but you just know he's going to be negative.
Yep.
But he's, it works well because you can't be relentlessly optimistic and do everything you think of doing. Sometimes you got to be careful and put the brakes on, and so many times, like I'll just have an idea and it sounds right to me, let's do it. And he's, no, I'll put that in a spreadsheet and we'll work out how much capital we need and, how's it actually going to work? What's our addressable customer base? And I don't know, between us all, we seem to make those things work.
Is that important to business success, is, I guess, to have not necessarily those checks and balances, but those complementary skills within the group that you're working with?
Oh, I think so, big time, because I sort of feel sorry for people who've got a business and they're a one-man owner, because it's really hard to be good at everything, right? So my theory's always been I'm not that good at that much, probably quite good at the vision and, sort of seeing the big opportunity and the plan and that sort of thing, but day-to-day running a business, not so good. So I think you need people surrounding you like a Steve or a Geoff who are good in their specialist areas. Obviously, Jeff's a very good marketer. Steve's a very good beanie, and together you get, much bigger than you would ever get on your own.
But a consistent thread is that you are very good at recognising these areas that you're not good at and bringing in good people. Or would you say some business owners, they would struggle with bringing people in? Maybe there's some ego, maybe there's other reasons, but you're good at it?
Yeah, I don't know what the reason is, but people kind of cling on to things a bit tight, I think, because, if you bring other people in and you allow them to become partners and those sort of things, you can have less. So, you'll have a smaller percentage, you get diluted, but I always think my diluted percentage is going to be much better than the percentage or the amount of money I would have if I kept it all to myself. So it might be all mine, but it wouldn't be as big. So I always think, a smaller piece of something big is better than a bigger piece of something small.
That's a good little line.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the culture at 42 Below? Because the Monty was a nice little passage in the book about the sort of the vodka shot. What was the Monty?
So the Monty was, if something good happened, we signed up a new customer or, we got a good review in a magazine or something like that, we'd have a Monty, which was a straight shot of vodka. And we didn't participate in those in the early days because we had our Empower business at one end of the building and they'd blockaded themselves down the other end doing vodka stuff, and they didn't like us at the business. But gradually we sort of merged, and we had a shared PA, and who's Jess and mine and other partners, PA, and she used to sit outside my office in the end. So she called the Monties, and she didn't mind a drink, but she used to call the Monties. So, and it was right outside my office. So they just became more and more frequent, and you were having Monties at 9 a.m, and 10 times a day. So it got slightly out of hand. Yeah.
Was 42 Below the most fun you've had in business?
No. People think it's fun, but it's still all the same, really. You still just got a whole lot of worries that you're trying to sort out all the time. So plenty of stuff go wrong. I mean, the end of it was good, but I mean, I know you're going to ask me about it later. But the business I've enjoyed the most is being in Turners, but for sort of different reasons. But there was definitely highlights in the 42 Below thing. Like, I've never been much of a drinker, but for a couple of years there I was, because you just couldn't avoid it. And some of the places you ended up going and some of the situations you got in were pretty wild.
It sounds like what you're talking about with the Monties and stuff is culture. Like, how much weight do you put in culture and building good culture in businesses?
Well, lots. I mean, there was a particular type of culture. So, I think in Turners, for instance, we've got a very good culture, but it's a completely different culture. I remember in 42 Below, people would have worked there for us for nothing. They just liked the environment so much. They just wanted to be there. Yeah, I remember one of the girls we had there who came for a job, and we were talking about the pay, and she goes, I'll work here for free. Like, I just want to be here, and you don't get that very often.
No.
Yeah, that's a real testament to the brand, I think, because, I mean, I was coming up at that stage, and it was a real iconic New Zealand brand in the sort of early 2000s, mid-2000s of 42 Below, and it was one of those products that almost transcended what it actually was, and it was almost like a movement, if that makes sense.
No, there's just so many crazy things. Like when we used to go overseas, which was quite a lot, because selling vodka, and one of those airline carry bags, you could fit 12 bottles of vodka in there.
Oh.
So, you can't take 50 mils of liquid or something, but in those days you could take as much as you want. So we'd all go on with our carry-on just full of vodka. Each one weighed about 50 kilos. Used to drag that on. And I remember going through customs, because we were doing advertising along the lines when we listed it. We're saying, would you like shares with that, with your cocktail? It's kind of the advertising vibe to get people interested. And everyone had shares. We had thousands of shareholders. And I remember coming back through the airport once, and the customs agent's starting to give me a hard time, and he goes, well, I'll let you go now, but he said, my shares better go up.
Yeah, tell us about the decision to list, because the business was only doing around 500K in turnover at the time, right? And so the decision to list on the stock exchange got a lot of critics, and a lot of people thought it wasn't the thing to do. Ended up being a great idea. But where did that idea come from, and what do you remember about that time?
Well, it's something I'd been thinking about for a long time, because, one of the most important things in business, having enough capital to grow it. And obviously went through Blue Star not having enough capital, and you're always constrained by that. But I always noticed that banks, when they lent to a listed company, it's not like in a private business you've got to put your house up for security, and they never want to lend you money. But in those days, they used to just lend you money on like what they call a negative pledge. So just say, yeah, you're a public company, you're audited, we trust you, we'll lend you the money. We don't want any particular security other than the negative pledge. And you could just borrow money off them. So I thought, that's pretty cool. I want to do that one day. So that was part of the reason. And then the other part was you could raise capital of other people, sort of a mechanism to do that. And then the third thing, it was got your publicity. So if you list a company, a lot of people hear about it, and it goes on the Reuters screens all around the world. So, you just become an important company just straight away by virtue of listing. So those are all the thoughts going in. And we found a company called Direct Broking run by Brent King, who was just, funnily enough, he was the founder of Dorchester that we ended up buying. He did the listing for us, and none of the big broking houses would have done it. They just thought we were a joke. But Brent did it as an opportunity for him, and he actually underwrote it. So he did the Charlie's listing a bit later on too for Mark Ellis. So he did it, and we got the listing away, and we actually got very slightly oversubscribed. We were raising 15 million, and I think we sent one or two checks back at the end because we got to like 15 million and 7, so just over, Yeah, so, and with that 15 million, it enabled us to grow. So we took the turnover, well, we're talking about the 1,000 cases a year, we got it up to 100,000 cases. So 100,000 dozen bottles of vodka. So a lot of hangovers in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Yeah, like what a great story that we know. You ended up selling to Bacardi for 100 million, which is 138 million New Zealand at the time. Yeah. Were you ready to sell? Like, was that was the right play?
I was more ready than Geoff was. I think Geoff sort of thought we could do a lot more, because one of the things we did, which turned out to be very smart, we did when we listed it, we did these things called warrants. So they sold with the shares, and it gave you the right to buy a share at a future time at a fixed value. So the warrants became quite good value. The sort of shares might have been 70 cents and the warrants were 50. So at prescribed time, sort of 1 year, 2 years in, people could exercise these warrants. So we kept having cash coming in. So we ended up having no debt there and money in the bank. I think when we sold it, we were close to 20 million in the bank. So, you know, we were just very strong financial position, so we never had to worry about running out of money. And, you know, we had enough money to sort of go forward and become quite a lot bigger. But I think that's what Geoff wanted to do. But, yeah, for a bunch of reasons, you know, it was a bird in the hand and, I'd been quite sick at that time and stuff. So just thought it was the time to, you know, make the most of the opportunity. We actually had quite a lot of suitors. It wasn't only Bacardi. There was others who were interested as well. People said at the time, oh, you were so lucky to get out of that, but not really. You know, we could have sold it to at least 2 other people. Yeah,
you mentioned you were sick. So at the same time, you are dealing with cancer. You've been diagnosed with, I think, stage 3 cancer, and you were too unwell to attend to the negotiations, which normally would have been sort of your department, right? But then Geoff had to go because you weren't up to it. Like, what do you remember about that period?
Well, a lot. So the very first meeting with Bacardi was the first day of my chemotherapy. So I went to that meeting because chemotherapy is sort of a cumulative thing. So it's never nice, but when you first get it, you know, you think for a few days you feel all right sort of thing, and then 3 weeks later you've got to go and get some more. So just every time it's worse. So I sort of started off being involved in the thing, and it took 6 months, and that's how long my chemo was. So by the time we got to the end, kind of the last meeting was my last chemo, and I just couldn't go, you know, I was just too crook. And I thought I wasn't going to even wake up in the morning. I felt that crook, you know. So Geoff just had to do it by himself, really, and he did a sterling job of it.
Yeah, because it was done on a sort of a handshake, right? They went outside of the main room and sort of got it over the line. Because I remember his retelling of it, and
yes,
it was really quite special.
I'm the same as you, yeah. I wasn't there, so I got the retelling.
Yeah, he just picks up the phone and gives you a call, and you know the deal's gone through.
Yeah. No, it was pretty cool, and it was good that it coincided with the end of the chemo, because then you start to feel better because you're not having it. And we went on a family holiday after that, and it was really good and cashed up and stuff, so it was great.
If it's all right, I'll talk a little bit about the cancer. I just want to read some stuff in the book. So, because your father was also dealing with cancer, and what you wrote was, Dad was much more resigned to what his doctor had said. They told me, I'm going to die, so I'm going to die, he said. I was clinging to the fact that I'd been told I might die. I didn't want to, so I was going to do whatever it took and threw everything I could at beating it. All round, it was a bad time. Did you have a fear of dying?
For sure, yeah, big time. Yeah, I didn't want to die. Well, I was 48 at that time, so I seemed a bit young. You know, I don't know if anyone ever wants to die, but I thought I had plenty left to do, and I, you know, youngish family. My 2 boys were, I think, 13 and 10 or something like that. So, yeah, a lot of things to live for. Yeah, so I was definitely afraid of it and definitely wanted to do something about it. Like, my father is a very sort of fatalistic type of person, so they told him he was going to die, so he said, I'm going to die, and the guy who told me that was a professor, so he knows what he's talking about. And he was worse than me when he got diagnosed because he had stage 4 and it had gone into his liver. So it was definitely a worse prognosis. But he went to chemo once and he said, I didn't like that, I'm never going again. Well, you know, I went there, you know, a lot of times, and I also kept going to the gym and stuff like that, which got harder and harder to do. I had the chemo. After I finished, I had intravenous vitamin C, went to osteopaths and naturopaths and took all the right vitamins, and, you know, anything you could possibly do, I did. So I thought, well, if it does get me, I've given it my best shot.
How did it change your perspective on work and business and that sort of stuff?
Well, not at all, really. It's weird because people think that you might have some big epiphany, but it didn't really happen. You know, I just sort of got better. And the worst thing about it is with bowel cancer, the give you an all clear after 5 years. So they say if it's going to come back, it's going to come back within 5 years. So you're sort of living possibly on borrowed time. You sort of don't know, and you have to go the early days check up every 3 months and then every 6 months. And by the time you get through the 5 years, you don't even have checkups for it anymore. So, they see you as all clear. But, thinking it's pretty stressful when you think, I could go and get this CT scan and there it is raising its head again, and it happens to lots of people. So, it's terrible for them. But fortunately, didn't happen for me.
As Geoff mentioned at the start, there was a woman, I think Viv from Northland. She was a mum of 4 that you met in hospital who was having treatment at the same time as you, but she couldn't afford it. Can you tell us about Viv?
Yeah, so I used to do the chemo with people with bowel cancer and also people with breast cancer. So Viv was one of the breast cancer people, and she had that HER2 positive, the one that Herceptin can cure. And it's a funny place to be because there's all this sort of gallows humour, and we're all sitting there, the odds of surviving, so they give you odds of surviving. So with my chemo, they said if you take this one, you've got a 50% chance of dying, but if you take this one, it's only a 30% chance of dying. So I thought, well, I'll have all that, read everything I could. Anyway, we were talking about this in this group, and everyone's going, I've got 70%, I've got 60% or whatever, and they get to Viv and she goes 5%. I said, like what? Like 5%? And she goes, well, I've got breast cancer. It's this very aggressive form. This, I hope anyone medical who listens to this, I might be wrong, but I think it was HER2 positive. And she said, I've had 1 dose of Herceptin and we mortgaged the house to do that, but I've got no more money. I can't do any more. So I've got a 95% chance of dying. And I thought, that is absolute shit. It was when Jacinda, no, sorry, it wasn't Jacinda, it was Helen Clark was Prime Minister. And they were trying to get it funded and she wouldn't fund it. And then when John Key came in, they did fund it. So I sort of really disliked Helen Clark for that. It probably was nothing to do with her directly, but just pissed me off at the time because, you're seeing the exact, people giving their lives because of that decision. So I said to Donna, I'm a pretty good salesman. I know I'm going to ask the oncologist, I'm going to say, why don't I pay some towards her and you discount your rate, and we'll both do something to help her. But I had that, and I wasn't a very good salesman, as it turned out, because he said, no, just the price is the price. And so we talked about it and just said, but bugger it, we'll pay, like it's not much in the scheme of things, but it's something we can do. And help one person who would have had a bad result, for sure.
What would it have been, over $100,000?
It's about there, yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. And she's still we still talk every Christmas. Well, she swapped Christmas cards, but she's gone on to have a couple more kids since then, and those kids have had kids, and so it's quite cool. That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool. And then that's led you into the doing some work for the Gut Cancer Foundation. You've been an extremely effective fundraiser, raised millions of dollars. Mm. Why did that become important to you?
Slightly a man on a mission then, because you say how does cancer change you? It changed me in this way, is that it's quite easy to fob off people if they say, give us money for breast cancer or something. You think, well, don't really want to. But when it's affected you personally, all of a sudden you know how bad it is. So I sort of thought, it's so real. It's not just something you think about out of the ether. It's something that you really have to do something about. So I was really, really focused on trying to help people with cancer after that time, and sort of didn't know how to do it. But, we used to give money and that sort of stuff. But I got approached by this guy, Richard Sullivan. I'm not sure, he's pretty high up in the health system now.
Yeah, he's the Director General?
Yeah, I think he's one of the big bosses. Mm. But he approached me, and he's a friend of Geoff's actually, and said, look, we want to start a charity. And he said, cancer charity. And he said, breast cancer kind of takes all the money at the moment, but there's plenty of other sorts of cancers. And he said, the thing we're interested in is cancers of the digestive system. So like esophageal cancer or pancreatic cancer or bowel cancer, stomach cancer, those sort of things. And he said, we want to start a charity, but he said, we're all medical guys. There's a bunch of us want to do it. We're all medical guys and we need some business people to make it really work, and we want to raise money and that money go to the cause, not be eaten up in administration and stuff. So would you be interested in doing it? So I said, yeah. So there was myself. So they had 2 business people, or 3 really. But the other main guy was Paul Hargraves. So he'd been the founder of Datacom, and he'd had pancreatic cancer, and he went on a cancer trial and got cured from it, which is a quite unusual to get cured from pancreatic cancer. But anyway, he made it through. And so we were there for a while, and I was there on the board. And then Paul passed away from something else, and not the pancreatic cancer. And I ended up as chairman there. But I did it for 10 years. And, we raised a lot of money. And one of the main players there was Professor Mike Finlay from Auckland Medical School. So he was an oncologist and a professor at Auckland Medical School. And, there were a few surgeons on the board there and stuff, and basically sort of had a pretty properly medically proven type thing and raised money for clinical trials. So we'd have a board that would approve the efficacy of the deal and that it all made sense, the clinical trial, and we'd go out and raise money for it to help pay for those clinical trials.
That must be incredibly fulfilling. Like,
it was big time.
Yeah. You build all this stuff and you've got this life, but finding ways to give back and help others, it's incredible. Yeah,
it's one of the, there's lots of charitable things you can do, but that was pretty close to home, that one. So, we embraced it a lot.
There's some stories shared with us as well that you sometimes will have amounts of cash on you and you will also donate just off the cuff to people that are in need as well.
Yeah. No, I'm a sort of sucker for that, people come up to you in the street and stuff. Yeah, so is Donna. I'm glad that I haven't got much cash on me these days. I don't have any cash these days, so I don't do it. But I remember I was in London once and we were going to dinner at Nobu in Knightsbridge, and you go into this tunnel and there was this guy in there and he's like, it's freezing like in winter. We were freezing all our clothes and he's lying there in bare feet and nice looking young guy. I don't know why the hell he was there. And he goes, please give me some money, I'm homeless. And I said, why the hell are you homeless? And I sort of talked to him about it. He'd had this just string of bad things going on with him, and I had £100 on me. So I said, well, I hope that helps. But, it's quite easy to overlook those things, isn't it? But it's a terrible place for some people to be. And, maybe some people, done stupid things and deserve to be there, but some people don't. So.
Continuing the story along, so you're out of 42 below, but you realise you've got these complementary skills in this now proven recipe for success with Geoff and Paul as well, right? And you figured out it was now time to set up a small venture capital fund that would allow you to continue to invest in business together, and you used your own money to fund it, raise a small amount of outside capital for other investors, and that was how the business bakery was formed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, why did you do this?
Well, I think it's what we were saying before. We had complementary skills and thought, well, we've used this recipe a few times and it's worked for us, so why don't we see if it can work some more? And we just pulled a bit of money. And we got some quite good people. And one of the people we got in was Alan Hubbard, who's sort of become a bit infamous, but he was a big catch for us at the time. And he put some money in, a few other sort of friends and family type people put some money in. But, that's how we did the investment in the old Dorchester, which turned into Turner's, how we raised the money to put into Trilogy and so on.
I don't want to skip over Rikoya, but when someone comes to you and says $50 for a candle, what's your first reaction?
Well, in those days it was quite weird because people didn't burn candles in their houses, but, these days everyone does, right? So once again, everyone thought...
It was a bit of Glade back then, wasn't it? It was just get one from the super.
The plug-in.
Yeah, that's right.
But it wasn't a very nice fragrance, was it? But no, once again, Donna helped me with that because... We knew the guy who owned the business. He was the brother of a guy who was working for us, and he'd started in Sydney, so it was an Australian company. He was making candles in his garage. So, but it was just interesting. He was, every month the business was growing, and there's more people adopting this home fragrance type stuff. So it's not only candles, but sprays and those sort of things. I thought that's actually quite interesting, and we looked up some numbers in America, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars spent on fragrant candles in America. So we thought, well, it's got to eventually trend down this part of the world. So we put some money in, and it was very small at that size. I can't remember exactly how big, but we got stuck into it and we listed it, and the listing was a flop. We tried to raise $10 million and we raised about $7 million, so we had to top it up with $3 million ourselves. And we did grow that business. We got it up to, I think, around 10 million or so in sales. So still a lot of $50 candles, right? But then we had the opportunity to buy Trilogy, and we thought that, man, that's just a perfect bolt-on for this business. So, we pushed pretty hard on that, and we ended up acquiring Trilogy, and the two businesses together worked very well. So I think Akoya's, it obviously still operates. We sold it, but I think it's like a $30 or $40 million business now out of candles. And the Trilogy business, and we acquired a few other businesses as well. So we got that original candle business up to, it was well over $100 million in turnover, maybe 120, 130 million in turnover. Yeah, we had a lot of people wanting to buy it off us. So yeah, we never put it on the market. We just kept having approaches, and they kept getting better. And then a couple of really good ones came out of the woodwork. So yeah, we ended up selling it.
For 200 million? That was your biggest exit?
Yeah, it was actually about 280, but we had a bit of debt in there. So if you sort of net it off, it was about 211 million. So it was a pretty big deal. And it's not as recognised as things like 42 Below, but it was actually, it's more profitable.
Numbers if you can get it.
Yeah.
Numbers if you can get it. That's one of the understatements of the podcast, the 270 episodes.
Yeah. Which leads to Dorchester. So in the middle of the global financial crisis, with finance companies collapsing across New Zealand, you bought 20% of Dorchester for $400K. That same 20% would have been worth $20 million a year earlier, but due to the GFC, it had lost 98% of its value. So I've got Grant zigs when others zag. But there's a bit going on here, right? Like the decision to do this, and also I don't think Geoff was in the dark. He wasn't quite aware that you
needed one of those candles. Light Akoya to see the deal.
No, I was in trouble for that. We got approached. So I knew quite a lot about Dorchester because I knew Brent, and I'd been a shareholder in and out of there a few times, so I knew quite a lot about the business. And he was a founding shareholder, and he had sold out a few years earlier and sort of got a professional management team in there who really didn't do a very good job of it, and they lent money unwisely, and it all fell apart in the GFC. So it went from being a company that's worth, 80, 90 million on the stock exchange to being worth like 1.5 million, just maybe 2, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it just went down the gurgler really quickly. And there was someone who owned 20% of it, and got put in front of us, said, this guy wants to sell now. It'll cost you $400,000. You've got to do it today. And Geoff was away on holiday, so Steve and I talked about it and thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? You can lose $400,000. But because I knew a lot about the company and what it had been, I thought, what if we could make it good again? It'd be $400,000 really well invested. And the opposition we had, like 90% of them had gone under. So you didn't have, when things came right, you were not going to have competition again, or not as much. So we did it. And then when Geoff came back, something to tell you, Geoff, and he wasn't pleased for sure.
No one thought this was a good idea except for you and Steve,
yes,
right?
That's correct, yeah.
But was your logic something like, well, it's going to turn at some point?
No, it was totally that. It was totally that. And you had no opposition, right? I think there was something like 70 companies went broke, and there might have been 10 left, so you didn't have much opposition, and there was still going to be business there in the future, and you had an infrastructure, and you had something that was already listed. Yeah, and it had some, okay assets in there.
So is that analysis? Is that speculation? Is that...
Well, as I said, I knew a bit about what it was before. It was actually much worse than we thought, because once we bought the share, we basically went in and took over the board, so I got to look under the hood, and it was actually much worse than we thought, which... Strangely, it was good because it needed such radical surgery that you couldn't muck about with it. You had to get really aggressive on the strategy to fix it up.
And is it your job to come up with that strategy to fix it up?
Well, some of the existing directors had already come up with some plans, so we broadly executed on those plans. Yeah, it's quite a long, complicated story, but they owed money to mums and dads. They used to invest, so they invest money, and then the finance company relends it at a higher rate and makes some margin in between. And they basically couldn't pay those people back. And then they'd had a whole lot of mortgage money that led to property development and never got the money back. So people defaulted, and they ended up owning quite a lot of property. So we had to sort of put a plan together to say to those people, look, you can't have your money back now because it's not there, but we don't want to be like everyone else and let it go under. We want to work at it and fix it up. And if you vote for that, we'll work really hard to get you your money back, which is in fact what we did. So I think it's absolutely the best story to come out of the GFC, because you had people like Hanover, which was Eric's company, I think pay 3 or 4 cents in the dollar. Well, people who hung in there got over 100 cents in the dollar. So they got all their money back plus some. And if they were still here today, hell, they would have made dollars out of their dollars.
Weird cultural. Sorry, Steve. This is weird. It's nagging in my head. Was Dorchester the company used to sponsor lawn bowls a lot?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's two.
That's two for
Can
two.
you go for three?
Yeah. I'll just sit now and I used to work in lawn bowls, so I remember the brand really vividly.
Multi-skilled.
Yeah, something like that. When you said mum and dad, like finances, I'm like, I remember this from somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, they used to go to the bowling clubs and places like that because it was older people who had money to invest and lived off their savings sort of thing. So, yeah, they were a prime target.
All right.
Right, I'm going to link it up to Turner's because there's a good story here. You realise mortgages weren't creating enough cash flow and approached Matt Harrison about acquiring EC Credit Control. And Matt's version is wonderful. He says, Grant went to the UK to buy a Ferrari. The dealer said another New Zealander had recently purchased one and suggested they share the shipping. He called you had dinner, and somehow he ended up selling you his company. Eventually, Dorchester wanted access to Turner's vehicle customers for finance and insurance. Turner's CEO wouldn't take your team's calls. So you decided that you were important enough that he would speak to you, and he didn't. You returned to the board and said, we should buy the company and fire him, and the joke became the strategy.
That's very true. All of that is true. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was very tongue-in-cheek. It's just one of the, I was a bit grumpy about it and thought, show him. But but people embraced the idea.
If he'd have taken the phone call, do you think you would have bought Turner's?
I think quite possibly not, because just one thing led to another. And then once the board got interested in that, so Brian Gaynor, has passed away now, unfortunately, but he was like a big guy in the finance world. He's the founder of Milford Asset Management, and they own 20%. So we thought, well, if we're going to get in there, how are we going to do it? We couldn't afford to buy it at the time, but we had some capability. So I went and saw him, and I knew him quite well, but I wouldn't say got on there well with him. But just said, look, we're interested in Turner's for these reasons. And he goes, laddie, just, very sort of looking down on you type thing, even though we're about the same age. And he said, I think that's a great idea, because he said, we bought into it. We thought we could turn it around. We couldn't. He said, I've been on the board and I can't make it work. So maybe you'd be better at it than me. So, yeah, we'll sell you that 20%. So that's how we got into it.
Mm. Yeah. I've got a passage here. So the logic of the Turners is a vehicle sales, finance and insurance together in one vertically integrated group. But I want to read what you say in the book about how much you love it. You say, for me personally, I love being in the car business. I enjoy it more than anything else I've done. It feels like a natural conclusion for someone who has always had the passion for automobiles that I've had. My overarching strategy was to have an integrated financial service business based on automobiles. We sell cars, finance them, and insure them with something that we own and place at every point where you can get margin out of a motor vehicle. With full integration, we retain the full margin because we own the companies providing all the additional services too. In the 2023-24 financial year, half of our profits came from the finance and insurance arms of the business. This sounds genius to me, but it's quite clear when you sort of put it together like that. Like, did this idea come to you easily?
Well, the idea really came from Xerox, and Xerox/Blue Star, because that's what we used to do with office equipment. So whenever you could, you wouldn't sell it, you would rent it, and you'd sell a service plan and recurring revenue streams, because the trouble with those equipment type businesses or a car business, you sell it, you make profit once, and then you got to sell another one. So you're kind of only as good as your next month. And we wanted to take the volatility out of it. So really just applied those same lessons. But I think we're kind of the only car business in the world that does that. So car dealers obviously provide finance and insurance, but they don't own the companies. They just do it to third parties. Whereas we have an insurance license, which is quite a hard thing to get. So we are our own underwriter, and we have our own finance company. And both those companies are quite big now. We own Autosure Insurance and Oxford Finance. And Oxford Finance is, like when we first bought into Dorchester, their finance book had got so depleted it was down to $6 million. Now our finance book is $600 million. So it's a big book now. Yeah.
It's a big book.
Yeah.
The biggest podcast of understatements I think we've ever done.
Well, funny enough, in the finance company world, you'd probably say it's medium large, because there's a few of those books that are in the billions, so yeah, we're okay, but we've got room to grow.
You never got the chance to fire the CEO because he left, but Todd Hunter became the CEO, Aaron Saunders became the CFO. Both have been central to the transformation. And you describe it as choose the right people and let them lead. Is it as simple as that?
I think it is as simple as that, yeah. Because they had, the old Turners had a board of all independent directors, apart from Brian in the end, but they were people who didn't have any skin in the game, and they're all pretty old and pretty old school type guys, sort of professional director type guys, and they were, I don't want to be uncharitable to sort of turn up for the paycheck and make sure it's a steady ship and no one makes any terrible mistakes, but it was going nowhere. And as soon as Todd got in charge, like Turner's was an auction house, a lot of people still refer to it as Turner's Auctions, although it's Turner's Automotive Group now. But it was an auction house, so you just sold cars at auction on behalf of dealers or importers, whatever, and just churned them through. But they said, well, there's really not much money in there. Like at that stage, Turner's was making about $6 million a year, and by contrast now makes $65 million a year, so it's a lot bigger. But yeah, it was just a small company sort of going nowhere. So they said, we're going to become like a car dealer. So we've got access to all these vehicles coming through. So instead of selling them at auction, we'll buy them and get more margin. And we still sell cars at auction, but we own a lot of the cars we sell. We buy them and resell them. So, yeah, we're more of a traditional type car dealer. And then as time went on, we progressed to the plan of having, more finance and insurance and those sort of things.
As chair, when do you step in? When do you need to? What's your role?
Well, I would say I've never had to step in. It's just, I think, I'd rate Todd really, really highly, and Aaron and lots of other people there really highly. So, they do a fantastic job, and I don't think you ever step in. You just, one thing that's great about Todd, whenever there's a problem, we have plenty of problems, but he'll say, these are the things that have happened this week, and this is how we're fixing them. Does it sound all right to you? And if there's anything big, we'd have the odd big thing, or we sit down and have a few hours meeting at it and figure a way to do it, but it's never kind of, you've done a shit job, so I'm going to have to tell you what to do. Never, ever like that. It's just collaborative, really.
But you did think that the marketing was a little bit outdated, and then...
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Yeah,
commission...
I did say that was shit. Yeah. I did say that. I was going to say Todd's not a marketing guy, he's an accountant, but he definitely has some marketing bones in his body. But the thing I remember, we used to do these full-page ads in the Herald, and it was, May Madness and, September Sellout and all these sort of things like a supermarket. And I was trying to insult him, and I said, these ads look like supermarket ads. And he goes, oh, yeah, it's good. That's the idea. And I thought, oh, okay, work to do here. So I knew there was something wrong with it, but I didn't know what the answer was. So John Roberts is on our board. He's a mate of a guy called Kim Thorpe, who used to be creative director for Saatchi's in New York. And he said, well, why don't I just talk to Kim? He's retired now, but he might have some ideas for us. And he came back ultimately with a Tina from Turner's idea. And, we set up an advertising kind of board or subcommittee, which John and I were on. And, we were with Kim, and, the Tina from Turner's was born.
Did the song... The first time you heard it, was it a toe tapper for you straight away, or did it take some time?
The Sell Us Your Car one.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it, yeah.
That's right.
Innocent Maxima, Dr. Opata.
You've missed your calling.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, the objective of that, I wouldn't say I loved it, but, I knew what it was going to do, because the guy who wrote that song used to work for us at 42 Below. So if you remember the old 42 Below ads, his name's Daryl Parsons. Give him a free plug there. He wrote the old 42 Below ads, which were very controversial. So we got him to do the production on these ads, and he came up with that song, and he said, I don't want to do like a 15-second ad or a 30-second. I want to do a 2-minute ad, because that's like as long as a song. And he said, so it won't sound like an ad, it'll sound like a song. And even if it's no good, people like it and tap along with it and that sort of stuff. And so that's what happened. So you'd go to an ad break, and all in the ad break was the Turner's song. And, it's done very good things for us.
Heaps of it's filmed in Hamilton, eh?
Yeah, all over the place.
But heaps of it's filmed in I'm sure heaps of it is filmed in Hamilton. I've seen
maybe
your old table tennis club down at Edgecombe.
It is.
Yeah. And then there's a cow in there, and there's all sorts.
Well, the Tina from Turner's thing has been a huge success. Someone from Turner's obviously going to ask you about Tina. It's one of the first things that come to mind. How does that move the needle? How does that move the needle, having someone so recognisable in such a healthy campaign? What does it actually do for the business?
I'll just state here, I've never met Tina, so...
Yeah. I find that incredible.
It is quite strange, isn't it? It is odd. I should make a point of doing that. But, once because I've never done that. They made a mask of my face and someone wore it in there. So Grant's here. Yeah.
I think she's moved to Samoa now as well.
That's right. But I think what it gave is the company personality, and it's quite hard because you think back to things like 42 Below, Trilogy. They had their own sort of personality and a brand that people could relate with. And it's like, I think it's hard with a used car dealer. It's like, what's the personality of a used car dealer? It's sort of someone a bit shonky, trying to flog you something that doesn't work very well. And instead of being that, we've become a sort of beloved brand. And we've won a lot of advertising awards, and we win the most trusted car dealer, year on year on year on year. So, so I think people, there's some love there for Turners. I think that's really what it's done for us. And I think it has helped us do a lot of business too.
Does that stuff get run by you? Are you just seeing it on social media or wherever the new Tina from Turner's ad is, or does that come through you?
No. I'm a non-executive in the company, so I'm not there doing day-to-day stuff. You do a bit because we have a property company, we have the advertising board, and we have a property company which I'm on the board of, so I get quite involved on that. The other part of that, the three things, the finance, insurance, and selling cars, is property. So we don't talk about that too much, but what we've been doing over the years, probably for the last 15 years, is buying our own yards. So rather than going rent from some third party where they can kick you out or put your rent up or something like that, we thought we want to be in control of our own destiny. So we own 23 of our yards now. So we've got a pretty big property portfolio, probably $200 million property portfolio, and growing all the time. Yeah, we're buying stuff all the time as we can afford it.
Yeah.
You ever pushed any of your own cars through Turners?
No.
Different markets.
It is a completely different world, yeah.
I'm going to get to the cars very soon.
Oh, sorry, jumped the gun.
When Shay asked you before, was it the most fun you had in business at 42 Below, you said no. I'm thinking the way your face lit up talking about Turners, is Turners the most fun you've had in business?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and still enjoy it. I mean, theoretically I should have retired, but they tell me at every annual meeting, what's your succession plan? But yeah, haven't got one quite yet.
Grant, we are sponsored by One New Zealand, and we always look for an opportunity to ask our guests about connection because that's one of our shared values. And I wanted to ask about your sort of like circle of friends, because the ones we've spoken to said that loyalty is one of your defining qualities. So I wondered how someone earns a place inside your small circle.
It's probably time, because I think I am a loyal person. Like, I've had the same wife for 42 years. Lived in the same house for 26 years and, do business with the same people I've done with for 10 years plus, so there's a sort of comfort in that, and, you can trust people, but it just takes time to achieve that, doesn't it? So, yeah, I'm kind of not out looking for new things because you never know what you've got when you talk to people. It takes a long time to really know someone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have regular connections or catch-ups with that small circle of friends?
Yeah. I mean, I could name drop here because I won't, but, I know quite a few pretty successful, famous people, but I think that's what they like, is that I wouldn't name drop them, so you'd be sort of surprised who I sort of hang with in my spare time, but I didn't give them to you to say anything about me or any of that sort of stuff. But, yeah, I think you just have that. And people who sort of get famous or well-known, it's quite hard for them, to talk to people they actually want to talk to, other than people, as opposed to people they have to talk to. Yeah, I think it's a difficult position. I've sort of got to know a few of those people and just, hang out as mates rather than, do it in some showy sort of way. Yeah.
Is it also difficult? I imagine you've made such wealth and it's so public that when you are meeting people, they're always kind of wanting something from you.
Are they pitching ideas at you as well?
Always wanting an angle or people asking for handouts. Like, is that a difficult part of life to navigate?
Honestly, it doesn't happen as often as you'd think. And,
because we've got this idea for a business.
It's kind of why we're here.
I'll look forward to hearing it. No, the thing we get more actually is people who, I quite like dealing with young people because I feel I'm young at heart and don't want to be an old fart even though I am. But I've had quite a few people lately who just, reach out and go, it's amazing the businesses that are out there. You hear all this negativity and stuff in the news and woe is me and everyone's a victim sort of thing. But there's a group of people out there really doing cool stuff. And I've had quite a few of these people just I've hung with lately who, You're doing just amazing things, making lots of money, like plenty of them. There's guys in their 30s and 40s, much richer than me, but still want sort of mentoring. It's quite strange. And just like I've done something, I never expect this to happen, but all of a sudden I'm really rich and, what happens next? What should I be doing and how should I be doing it and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I enjoy doing that and happy to do it for people if it adds value to them. Yeah.
Yeah, that must be cool.
Yeah.
To help someone out, because it is a unique-ish path, but to be able to lend your experience to someone who's young and enthusiastic and is looking for answers.
Yeah, it's quite honestly, you'd be surprised the money people are making out there, and it never gets talked about. Just keep their heads down, the tall poppy thing, don't want to talk to people. So they don't have many people to talk to.
That tall poppy thing, that's an interesting subset of New Zealand culture in itself. Do you notice it with, I guess, your international experiences that you've had, that it is less prevalent in other places than it is here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the real comparison to draw is the US. So my youngest son, Toby, lives in the US. He's a software engineer and works in Silicon Valley. So it's like relentless positivity there. And if someone's successful, everyone loves them for it. Whereas here, it's sort of, they must have cheated, they must have inherited it, they don't pay enough tax, they're just, and you say something like, well, actually I paid a lot of tax and I employed a lot of people and, that old chestnut, trickle down capitalism and all that sort of stuff. And, you just get people finding a negative in anything. So, yeah, it does get quite frustrating sometimes.
The other thing on that is like failure in business. And I've got from the book, really, do we push ourselves intellectually or commercially the way we ought to? Because you fail, failure is expected somewhat in the gym, but not accepted in business. But it's the only real way to learn, isn't it? To fail and figure it out. I
think that's true, yeah. Yeah, I mean, once again, you look at the US, most people have made a lot of money, have had a few failures along the way, but it's hard to get away from a failure in New Zealand. People remember it forever. And it hasn't affected me too much. I haven't seemed to have had that problem with it, but a lot of people do. You see the headline in the paper and it's just all the negatives you could ever think about a person and why they're going to fail. Yeah, it's not good. So New Zealand could be a lot better country than it is if people had a better attitude. All
right, I've left some space to talk about cars because we haven't mentioned it until now, but this is obviously a huge part of your life and the book is really well written and it sort of documents all of the Ferraris and different cars you bought along the way. So first of all, what are the stats? How many have you bought? How many are in the garage at the moment?
Well, I think overall I bought a couple of hundred cars over the years. I still have 11 cars. Actually, I've got 11 sort of collection type cars and then a couple we use for everyday cars. So maybe 13 or 14 cars. But my real passion is Ferrari. And I've had 50 Ferraris now. I bought my 50th one this year. So I've had a reasonable go and all my collection cars are Ferrari. So,
And cars are like you talk in the book about kind of a reward or, when something good happens, you might go and get yourself the new car and you'll buy and you'll sell and that's kind of your happy place.
Totally. That's what I always think about. I think if I do this, I could have this car, It's always...
Have you ever sold one and regretted it afterwards?
Oh, yeah.
Ever tried to buy it back?
Yeah, I've done it. Oh, I've had cars I've owned 3 times, hopeless really. But, yeah, I've had... It's almost as bad as the Zero story. Like I've just collected cars because I like them and it's just a passion for me. But weirdly, it's sort of turned into, some cars, particularly Ferrari, turn out to be investment cars. And I never thought of that. But you just buy something and you have it in your garage a few years and it's worth more than you paid for it, which is very unusual in cars. And I've had a few cars along an example I'll give you, I had a Ferrari Enzo. And I bought that for $5 million, and I bought it in England, and it was brand new. So when I bought it, it was like, I don't know, 10 or 15-year-old car, but it had never been used. So it was really, really unique. And I bought it for $5 million, and I sold it, 5 million Kiwi, I sold it for $5 million US, and I thought, and I wasn't intending to sell it when I bought it or anything. Wow. I just, I wanted to buy something else and needed the money. So I sold it. Well, that car's probably worth $10 million now, wow. 10 million US. So I thought, I wish I hadn't sold that really. But, so I've got quite a few cars like that. But what do you do?
Can you tell us about the world of Ferrari? Because there's this excerpt where you get invited over and you've got to put down a deposit and you're not quite sure if you're going to get the car. Can you tell us about how that all came to be?
Ferrari have these special cars like the Enzo. They call them F cars, so they're sort of halo cars, and they'll make one about every 10 years, and it's sort of by invite only to be able to buy one. They make them in limited numbers and sort of thing you dream of but you can never get. And when I bought this Enzo, the Ferrari dealer said to me, Ferrari are pretty interested you bought that Enzo. You should go to Maranello next week. And I said, it's like far away, so why? And they said, they just want to meet with you and, we suggest you go. So I went with Matt Harrison, actually. He was my partner there.
Your plus one, wasn't he?
He's my plus one, yeah. And so we went to Maranello and we didn't know what was in store for us. Anyway, we get there and they go, oh, yes, Mr. Galliera is waiting to see you. And it turns out he's Director of Sales and Marketing for Ferrari. And he takes us to the boardroom and there's Matt and I and Enrico there. And we sit there and have lunch in the Ferrari boardroom and we're just talking about just stuff, like nothing in particular. And in the end, I said, why am I here? And he goes, we just want to get to know you. I said, oh, yeah. And he goes, I will show you something though. So we go outside and we go to this room and it's all sort of darkened off and all the smoke clears and there's the new LaFerrari. And it hadn't been released or anything at that time. So it was a brand new car that very few people had seen. And we saw it. And I said, now I'm here. I'm going to get one of these. He goes, no, no, it's not that. We're just getting to know you. And I said, well, I definitely would like it. So, what happens? And he goes, well, if things work out well, we'll let you know and you'll pay a deposit. And I said, so once I pay a deposit, then I've got it. Oh, no. He goes, when we ask you for the second deposit, that's when you know you're going to get it. And the whole thing took a long time. Yeah,
it's like joining a very elite club, isn't it? Like a family.
That's what they said. It's, you can be part of our family and that's the way we treat it. And they have been very like that. Unfortunately, Enrico's just left because he was a great guy and I had a lot to do with him over the time. And, he's just gone from there. So I did have a really good connection in the top of Ferrari. But
So you did end up getting the car. Was that the Enzo?
No, it was the LaFerrari. It was the LaFerrari. Yeah. So I didn't end up getting it, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that carry more emotional meaning, getting your hands on a car like that, than other Ferraris?
That sure had a lot of meaning. I mean, it is a family. Like they run an event called Cavalcade every year, and theoretically it's for the top 100 customers in the world. But I know I'm not in the top 100, but, some people don't go, so you sort of snag a place in there.
You don't reckon? You must be close.
There's big people with 500 cars out there.
Really?
Yeah. Some big collectors out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but, I managed to go 9 times. So
you must be number 101 then.
No, I think once you go a few times and you get to know the people and you get to know all the guys, like I had dinner with Benedetto, who's the CEO of Ferrari in Melbourne a few months ago. So you do get to know the people very well. When we did the very first cavalcade, they put you in car numbers, and I was car number 6, and Luca Montezemolo, who was the chairman of Ferrari at the time, was car number 4. So you get to hang with him, So it is like a family for sure. Yeah, I really enjoy the whole thing.
Yeah, I can see, and you've got the Instagram page, which is going off too. You've got about 70,000 followers on your.
Well, I'm nearly 80 actually. If I could get 79.7 today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
here we go.
This could happen.
Go follow it. Yeah. Do you enjoy doing that? Like, when did that start, and how did you get the idea to do the Instagram stuff?
Well, initially my family were all into it, and I used to say, "You're a bunch of dicks." Why do you want to be doing that? Tell people all your business, and I said, "No, you should do it. You find out all sorts of stuff, and you meet people." And I thought, I don't want to meet anyone, so I don't care. But I had I've got a mate who lives in Singapore, and he sort of got into it, and he's a bit younger than me, but he was sort of doing these deals where, he just put stuff up about his cars and racing and stuff like that, and he had, I think, 25,000 followers. And I said, that must be good. Do you get deals? And he goes, yeah, people pay me to put things on there. And he said, you should do it. It's really good. So, I just started, and he's buttoned right off it, but I'm still doing it. And I just sort of try and post something each week that might be interesting to people, and it's just gradually growing,
Have you got a content team? Is it just you out there with a camera, or have you got
It's
people?
just me. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
One of the contacts has suggested we ask you about the best drive you've ever been on. I'm not sure if you know what this might be referring to. Have you got a greatest drive that you've ever been on?
Well, the one that I think was greatest to me, it might have been Matt who suggested this to you, because I did one cavalcade with him. So when you do cavalcade, it's got a they call it a regularity trial, but they give you a piece of road, and what you're supposed to do is the road gets blocked off, and then they say, you've got to do this 50 kilometres and you've got to do it in an average of 65 kilometres an hour, and if you do that, you get a prize. But no one pays any attention to that. They just want to go like hell. So we had this one drive in Tuscany, and I had the Enzo up there, and we were just absolutely nailing it, and it was on a very windy, narrow mountain road, and Matt was the passenger, and I always remember he saying to me, GB, we're like a centimetre from the edge of this cliff. And we're even closer now. And I was just like in the zone and going, and we had this other guy behind us who was keeping up, which I didn't like. I was trying to shake him. And it was 56 kilometres, I think, this stage, and it was just the most fantastic drive I've ever done, sort of the best car in the world and the best road in the world. So I'm not sure if that's what you were doing.
That was the one, yeah. Great. And then the other connection to cars is Liam Lawson. So can you tell us your connection to Liam and how this all came to be and what support you sort of gave him in the early days and even now?
Yeah, so I got introduced to Liam by a guy called Grant McDonald, who he used to own a magazine called Speed Sport, which is now doesn't exist anymore, but he used to sort of mentor and help young drivers, and it was a motor racing magazine. And he mentored Liam in the early days and gave him a scholarship to get into racing cars after go-karts. So the way the motor racing thing sort of works is, you go into karting, and if you're good at karting, you move up to cars and so on. So Liam's had a lot of help. I mean, his parents basically gave their everything, all their money and all their time to getting him to the level.
They burned the boats.
They sure did. Yeah, they burned everything. And he's one of, I think, 4 kids. So, the family sacrificed quite a lot to get him there. And then Grant gave him a scholarship to run into Formula Vs, which is kind of low-level car racing. And then he went into Formula Ford, and he won the New Zealand Formula Ford Championship. And if you know anything about Formula One, virtually every Formula One driver's driven at Formula Ford. It's just the rite of passage sort of thing to do that. And Liam won the championship, and he was the youngest winner in New Zealand history. Well, not New Zealand, the world. He was the youngest in the world. I think he won it at 15. And that's when I met him. So Grant McDonald came and saw me and said, I've helped a few guys in the past, and he said, look, I know you've helped people in the past, but I've got this kid, and I've nothing in it for me, but I think he's really, really good. Do you want to help him? And I was, I don't know. I'm sick of spending money on.
Did you say no straight away?
I sort of said I don't know. I was a bit waffly about it. But he said, well, would you like to meet him? I said, sure, bring him in. So a couple of weeks later he came in, and he was just 15 years old, but very engaging, good personality. So not only could he drive a car, drive a car really well, but he just had a good personality, spoke well, was intelligent and articulate. I sort of thought, he's sort of the full package. And they said, look, he's got a deal where he can drive in Formula 4 in Australia, but we haven't got enough money to even put him on a plane to go there. Would you pay for that? So I said, it's not much money. So I said, yeah, sure. And that was the start of it. And then since that time, a lot of other people got involved, but we had a partnership, like a limited partnership, which raised money for Liam. So I was the chairman of that partnership. There's 2 other guys on that. And we went out and raised money for him. And we raised a lot of money and got a lot of people in. So Turner's put a lot of money into Liam. I've personally put some money in. Porter's group in Hamilton, Giltrap group here in Auckland, plus lots of other people have put money into him. And I think we would have raised out of New Zealand probably $7 or $8 million, something like that, to fund his career. And, we helped him get the Red Bull contract and all that sort of stuff. One of the guys in the partnership was a lawyer, so we did the work on the Red Bull contract for him and all that sort of stuff, and obviously he's in Formula One now. So the partnership thing has largely died off because he doesn't need any of that stuff anymore. But I still have quite a lot to do with him because he's making money now instead of spending money. So I help him on his financial side. So I talk to him pretty regularly. I was talking to him this morning about Spa coming up and stuff. Yeah, so I just sort of help him out and be a mentor on all sorts of things, money and his life is just so changed. You go from being, just a guy in New Zealand to being very world famous, and it takes a lot to cope with that. He's still only 24. So,
do we as a New Zealand public and sporting public sort of misunderstand or not even understand the world that he's operating in?
I think not even understand. Not really. The fan base is so massive. I think there's like 70 or 80 million people watch every race. So, there's just a big group of people. And he is like truly world famous. I mean, you walk down any street anywhere with him, it's photographs and autographs. And, when he was back here and it was over Christmas, I had to go into the accountancy firm who does his work with him. And we had this sort of plan to go into Price Waterhouse. We had this plan to go to Price Waterhouse. So they've got a private car park. So they said, we'll give you this tag and you go in the private car park and you go in the private lift and no one's going to see you. And so we do all that. We get in the car park, press the button on the lift, and the doors open, and there's some girl in there. And she goes, "Oh my God, it's you!" And she was just so starstruck she couldn't even talk. She was standing there, Yeah. So it's crazy. And then we get into Price Waterhouse, and half the partners in Price Waterhouse are in the room. There's just such a fan base, and people want to be associated with it. And it's just like that everywhere. So it takes a bit of coping.
I want to give a little bit more context too from a passage from the book. You say there are only 22 Formula One drivers in the world, and estimates are that it costs much more than $10 million to get enough experience to get the super license required to be able to race in Formula One. Only a few dozen people in the world have one, but there are hundreds or thousands of drivers who dream of reaching that level. It really is just such a long shot. It's hard to overstate, especially when looking at Liam's meteoric rise, just how unlikely another Formula One driver actually is.
Well, I think that's all true, especially from New Zealand, because one of the things the teams consider is the marketability of the person they've got. So if you're a German or an American or something like that, you've got a whole loyal customer base from a big country. Whereas in New Zealand, best you've got 5 million people. So it's very hard coming from New Zealand. And, the other thing with him is he had to go and live in foreign countries in Europe from when he was 16. So, if you're a European, well, you just tootle down the road from France to Germany or wherever you're going. But he had to actually shift countries, basically went in with a foster family that looked after him while he was there, and he's been on his own doing that stuff for the last 8 years. So it's to get another Formula One driver out of New Zealand is exceedingly difficult. Mm. But, with him, it's just such a long shot, but he did get there. Now he's got to make sure he stays there. But he's doing a good job at the moment.
Is he showing you some pretty cool behind-the-scenes stuff? Does he get you over?
Yeah. I've been to a lot of races. The lucky thing is, and that's what the reward in it for me really, I'm pleased to see him get there, but my personal reward is, I can go to the race in the car with him. So you go in through the gates and you park where the Formula One drivers park and you sit in the pits and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, I've done it quite a few times now, so the thrill is slightly worn off. But, the first few times you did it, you sort of can't believe it. Like, you're in the pits there and there's Max Verstappen and there's just all these people. And then you're talking to them and you think, this is unreal, Yeah. And, people are sending me screenshots from home. I just see you on TV and all this sort of stuff. It's crazy. Yeah.
And are you watching all of his races live?
Oh, absolutely.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
No.
Are you watching the race or are you just watching the leaderboard and seeing where he is and what time he's...
I've got absolutely those two hats on because, my loyalty from cars is to Ferrari. So I'm watching Ferrari, hoping they're doing well. But I'm on that leaderboard a lot.
Tell us about Donna. We've sort of mentioned Donna a little bit throughout. But what role has she played? I can't remember how many years you said you've been
42.
married. 42.
Yeah.
42.
Funny enough.
Yeah. What role has she played in this? And tell us about the influence Donna has had on you.
Well, I think the first thing is, she's trad wife. So, she's wanted to stay home, look after our kids. So when our first son was born, I think she worked for the first 6 months, but then we just found ourselves able to afford for her not to work. So she's looked after the kids, but she does all her personal finances, which is actually a reasonably big job. There's a lot of administration in that. She does that, but I think most of all, she sort of backed me when other people wouldn't. I think quite often partners can be a handbrake. Think of all the reasons why you couldn't do stuff. Focus on the risk, and, she does do that sometimes, but, she's generally supportive and, through good times and bad, like when I had the cancer, she came to every chemotherapy session with me. And, if you're the person who's well, you probably don't want to do that, do you? But, she came to every session and booked everything and, made everything work. And that time was so traumatic, when I got diagnosed, I didn't expect that was my problem. I mean, I went and had a colonoscopy because of sore stomach, so I didn't think it was cancer. But it was. And I think that was on a Thursday. And I had the operation on the Monday, so it was just completely out of the blue. And she just hugely supported me through all that stuff. Yeah, it was Would be hard to do on your own, that's for sure.
Would you say she's the most important business partner that you've ever had?
Oh, for sure. Well, no, in a different way, I guess, but it wouldn't have happened without her, that's for sure. Yeah.
And how old are the kids now?
33 and 30.
33 and 30.
Yeah, and I've got a daughter from my first marriage who's 45, so she'll hate that. I think she's 44 actually, not 45.
And you're a granddad now?
I'm a granddad 5 times over, yeah.
5 times over, yeah. What does that mean to you?
Well, when my daughter had kids, I was I wasn't ready for it really, because it sort of means you're old, because I was quite young when I had her and she was quite young when she had her kids. So like I think she had her first child when my kids were kind of 10 and 12 or something like that, you know. So we're sort of bringing up our own family and having grandchildren at the same time, which is kind of a weird dynamic. Yeah, but I'm enjoying it now. But we've been with her kids, we've been a bit out of touch because they live in Whangarei, so far away, so don't have too much to do with them. But having the little one who's 1 week old now is pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool.
And an undercover lover of art, is there something different about art and cars? Like, I know you've got a love of cars, but a love of New Zealand art as well?
Yeah, I like art in general. Yeah, so we got quite a lot of New Zealand art, and I do like art. And we've been collecting stuff for a long time. Well, we used to collect that historic New Zealand art, but not so much of that now. But we've still got some quite nice work, and got them over a long period of time. So we've got stuff we really like, which we'll never sell or anything. We'll just hang on to it.
Grant, this has been an epic. I've got a few big questions at the end, just to bring us home on the home.
Give me when I'm tired.
What's a hard truth about entrepreneurship that success stories usually leave out?
Well, I'll go back. I think I said that Elon Musk quote before, didn't I? But I was just reading about that, and I thought it really encapsulated it well. So, the way the most successful people are the people who have the most tolerance for pain. And he had another quote in there. He said, entrepreneurialism is like chewing on broken glass while staring into the abyss. And I thought, it's probably a bit dramatic, but it's sort of like that. You just have so many bad times and you've got to be resilient, because the good times are few and far between. Actually, the other thing, there's probably a good quote in that area. Liam did a podcast in the UK, I don't know, a month or so ago, and he was talking about, when do you feel good? And he said, well, basically never. He said, you have these little moments, like I was saying, before you sell a business or something, you have this small moment. He said, you get a place in a race, or you do a pass or something, have a successful day. So it lasts about 30 seconds, because then you think, well, okay, I've done that. Now next week I've got to stand up and do it again, So it's a bit like that. It's just, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want people to feel sorry for me or anything, because for some reason I like that, One thing I always say to Donna, I said, she sort of wants to run from danger and I want to run towards it, So just give me that challenge, yeah.
Can you teach entrepreneurship, or do you have to go through it to learn it?
Well, I think you probably have to have a mindset to begin with, because I don't think everyone's up for it. You've got to want to do well, and then yeah, you can teach it to an extent. It's like sales training or everything else. You can teach it to an extent. I mean, I have sales guys working for me. Some guys are not very salesy at all, but they just do it to a formula. So I guess you can do that type of thing, the Xerox type model. But I think really you're sort of born for that, or you're not, really. What
do you look for in a business within the first look under the hood, or someone's telling you about a business, or you're looking to invest? What are you looking for? Scalability,
how big you can make it. Yeah, so I don't mind investing in something small, but it's got to be able to be big. So, yeah, if you look in New Zealand, like the electricity business, I mean, typically Turners can be big in New Zealand, but most businesses can't be. So, you have to look further afield. Like we've got another business at the moment, which is kind of in its startup phase, called Me Today, which is a vitamin supplement company. It does a bit of skincare and stuff, but the market for Me Today is absolutely huge, the worldwide market. And, we've had quite a tough start with that business, but it's starting to work well for us now. And the addressable market is hundreds of billions of dollars, and you've got something small. A lot of people want vitamins. It's easy to ship. It's got high margin, So I like that business, even though it's been pretty difficult so far. I still think we're going to get there with it, and it's going to do really well.
Is there anything in business that immediately makes you say no?
It'd be hard to say a specific thing, but I know when I see it. someone will say something. Some guy approached me the other day. I'm just trying to remember what it was about, but I just looked at it and thought immediately that wouldn't be me. I mean, I think the other thing you want is if you build it big, you want, high barriers to entry for other people. So something like Turners looks like that. If you wanted to set up a Turners, I think in total we've got nearly 40 sites now, and because we do cars and trucks and machinery and damaged cars, all sorts of things. So we've got probably about 40 different locations. You think if someone, no one else can do that really, not unless you're going to spend an awful lot of money and it wouldn't be worth it. So yeah, it's one of the things I liked about Turners in the beginning, just a high barrier to entry for anyone else to do it. And, you've seen guys like Two Cheap Cars come along and, they've done okay, but for them to be Turners, it's a really big job.
Yeah. You can't say Liam Lawson for this one, but what's the best investment you've made in another person?
Well, I'd like to think my kids, really. I mean, outside of business. So, both Don and I went to teachers' college, not university, but, we didn't get degrees or anything like that. And, what we tried to do, particularly Donna, bringing up the kids, she wanted the kids to have degrees, sort of what we couldn't have. And so, yeah, she pushed them along and made them work really hard. And, we've got two kids, one who got a law degree with first class honours and the other one's got a Master of Engineering from Berkeley in the US. So, you say, well, that was a good investment. They both got good jobs and, turned out to be good kids. So I think it's probably the best investment.
Answer. That's a great answer.
It is good.
Yeah.
It's true as well.
What is if you've got a worst deal, what's the worst deal you've done?
It'd be interesting. It's sort of the worst and potentially the best. It's this Me Today business. So when we started that in 2018, so just before COVID, and we did an acquisition. We bought a Manuka honey company because we thought, like we did when we bought Trilogy, we'll just boost the thing up and, make it go faster, quicker type of thing. And then COVID hit and we used to sell most of the Manuka honey to China. And, of course, China shut down over COVID. But we paid, I think it was $37 million for this business, so it was quite a big investment. And it just turned out to be worth nothing. And Steve and I have just tipped money into the business to basically fix it up from that disaster. So I'd say that is definitely the worst deal I've ever done. And we put, literally like tens of millions of dollars in there to fix that up and come out the other side now, which is why I feel quite positive about it. So I think it could end up as a good story. But, yeah, that was a bad time because, basically nothing was working over COVID. Turners was, funnily enough.
What did you learn from that one?
You can't always be right, I guess. I'm quite used to being right, not always right, but, normally thereabouts. But, yeah, I thought I knew and I didn't there. They got that completely wrong. So I honestly don't know what you'd do differently if you had that chance again. It was just a series of circumstances that what can you do? It's like things we're having now, like this war and, there's all sorts of things outside your control that happen and just something really big happened that you couldn't control. But, yeah, I'd rather we hadn't bought that business for sure.
When have you been lucky?
Lots of times. I think it's a mix of hard work and luck. Oh, I'll tell you one lucky thing we had. When we had Trilogy, and we had Princess Kate down in New Zealand, and one of our girls took a goodie bag. So our big hero product was rosehip oil in Trilogy. And she sent a goodie bag down to Princess Kate's hotel. And you don't even know if people get these things, but said, could you give it to her, please? Anyway, they obviously did because a couple of months later, she was being interviewed by Hello magazine in the US, UK, not US. And they said, you got that beautiful skin. How do you do that? And she pulls out Trilogy rosehip oil and says, I got this in New Zealand. It's just fantastic for your skin. And you can't pay the royals for advertising. She just said it. And the phone just ran hot, like it boots the chemist here. How can we get our hands on this? And it just, literally doubled our turnover.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it
really?
was massive.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was massive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was super lucky.
That's a great story. Is mentorship the most useful expression of your experience now?
I think probably. It's part of the reason I did the book, which I didn't say before, but I get a lot of people asking me, say, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Could you help me? And you can't. It's not possible to help all the people that ask. And, people just genuinely don't know what to do or how to think about stuff. So I thought if I put it in there, the people who ask me in the future, read the book, then come back to me if you've got some questions. So,
or listen to the podcast now.
Well, of course, yeah. I'll say that first, actually.
Are you more proud of the wealth you've created or what you've done with it?
I mean, money for money's sake, this would be another thing that goes back to my family. Like, my parents are keen on making money, but they sort of wanted it for money's sake. So they wanted to say, I've got, this asset or that asset, and, I'm better than the neighbours sort of thing. And I've never really thought about it that way. I've just sort of thought, I get more money so I can spend more money. I don't necessarily want to hang on to it. I want to have fun with it and, look after my family with it and all those sort of things. But I don't like money for money's sake. And I tell you what, I'd be a lot richer if I didn't waste so much. Yeah.
What do you know about happiness now that you didn't know at 30?
The weird thing is, it's what happiness is, because you don't, I suppose when you're younger, you think, I want to be happy and I want to have a good time and I want to always be happy, but that's not life. So you sort of get to a stage where, you're normal as you're happy, like I've got all these stupid sort of habits. Like I like watching the chase at night. So I've got to be home at 5 o'clock to watch the chase, and I have my dinner at 5 o'clock, which is not very sort of tycoonish, is it? But it's what I like doing, and that's sort of happiness for me, I like living in my house, like my family, those sort of things. So, not really looking for some thrill all the time.
I like that answer. Chase is good. Chase is good value. I'm a 6 o'clock news guy with my dinner, so there you go.
Oh, you've missed the chase at that stage.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've had to substitute one for the other.
These are really great answers. I've only got one more really. Well, it's advice, life advice, business advice, anything for people listening who might look at you and want to, I don't know, find some inspiration.
Well, have a go would be my answer, because life is actually pretty short. Like because I'm getting older now. When you're young, I don't know, up to a certain age, probably in your 40s or something, you think you've just got forever, But as you get a bit older, you think, oh, my runway's not that long. And, if you do something and you make a stuff up of it, well, so what really? You get to your deathbed and go, oh, I wish I'd mucked around more. Or, you'd really want to think, oh, I'm glad I had a go. And tried something, and if it works out, it's good. If it didn't work out, well, at least you had a go, and you can be proud of trying, So, yeah, I don't think don't die wondering type of thing.
Yeah, I got that from reading the book. I found it inspiring, like your story of going all in and the success, but the risk you take, and how hard you've worked for what you've got. I think it was, I can't recommend it highly enough for anyone listening. You've heard the podcast. Go and read the book. No Pit Stops: The Business of Going All In. Grant, this has been an epic. It's been so cool. I don't even know how long we've been going. It's the best sign of an episode because I'm so invested. But thank you for coming down and sharing so much of your story and your life with us. Yeah, I found it really, really cool.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was great.
Cheers, Grant.
Yeah, thank you.
There are people you never want to forget. But people get old. Memories fade. And then one day, it's too late to ask the questions that matter most. That's why we created Reflections, to capture the magic before it slips away.
How did she like camping?
At Reflections, our award-winning interviewers sit down with your loved ones with time, care, and curiosity and capture their life story in their own words. The result is a beautifully crafted family documentary your loved ones will treasure for generations. One day, you'll want to hear that laugh again. We make sure you always can. Reflections, keeping family stories beautifully alive. Find us at reflections.life.